real thing.
Andy says he can't find me. I don't know. I'm on the my homepage, live stream, playlist, second one down.
Standard model does is a theoretical assumption. In the electric universe, there is no such thing as a failed star. They have no thermonuclear engine to fail. All bodies in the galaxy receive external electrical energy from the galactic circuit. Radio astronomers, for the most part unwittingly, trace the circuit by mapping the magnetic fields of galaxies and stars. These fields are generated by the electric current flowing in the circuit. The circuits are unrecognized due to the mistaken conviction that the magnetic fields can be frozen into plasma. It can't even be frozen into rock. It weakens. The father of plasma physics, Hans Elfing, appealed against this mistaken notion in his Nobel Prize acceptance speech in 1970. But to give up this false belief would require discarding decades of theoretical work, reputations, and Nobel Prizes built upon it. The report continues. Previously, astronomers thought the pair of dim bulbs was just one typical faint brown dwarf with no record-smashing titles. But when NASA's Spitzer Space Telescope observed the brown dwarf with its heat-seeking infrared vision, it was able to accurately measure the object's extreme faintness and low temperature for the first time. What's more, Spitzer data revealed the brown dwarf is, in fact, twins. Both of these objects are the first to break the barrier of 1/1,000,000th the total light emitted power of the sun, said Adam Bergasser of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Cambridge. Bergasser is a lead author of a new paper about the discovery appearing in the Astrophysical Journal Letters. Brown dwarfs are misfits of the cosmos. They are compact balls of gas floating freely in space. But they are too cool and lightweight to be stars, and too warm and massive to be planets. The name brown dwarf comes from the fact that these small star-like bodies change color over time as they cool, and thus have no definitive color. In reality, most brown dwarfs would appear reddish. Not much of a difference between red and brown, if they could be seen with the naked eye. Their feeble light output also means they are hard to find. The first brown dwarf wasn't discovered until 1995. Hundreds are known today. Astronomers say many more in space still waiting to be discovered. Comment: all stars are in an electrical phenomenon. There are no misfits in an electric universe. All of the assumptions being heaped upon the meager photos received from deep space merely serve, as usual, to force fit the data to the standard model of stars. The very name, brown dwarf, assumes that these stars are compact balls of gas floating freely in space. In stark comparison, the electric model describes them as huge, because the light from a star is a plasma discharge phenomenon with only a loose relationship to the physical size of the star and a strong dependence on the electrical environment. Brown dwarfs do not simply cool down over time and wink out. They are externally powered electric lights. In December 1999, Wall wrote, "The apparent size and color of an electric star is an electrical phenomenon. If Jupiter's magnetosphere were lit up, it would appear the size of the full moon. The light of a red star is due to the distended anode glow of an electrically low-stressed star. Red giants are more visible and scaled up example of what an L-type brown dwarf star might look like close up." The report continues. Astronomers recently used Spitzer's ultra-sensitive infrared vision, which they shut Spitzer down, by the way, with no real explanation, to learn more about the object, which was still thought to be a solo brown dwarf. These data revealed a warm atmospheric temperature of 565 to 635 Kelvin, 560 to 680 degrees Fahrenheit. While this is hundreds of degrees hotter than Jupiter, it's still downright cold as far as stars go. In fact, it is one of the coldest star-like bodies measured so far. To calculate the object's brightness, the researchers had to first determine its distance from Earth. After 3 years of precise measurements with the Anglo-Australian Observatory in Australia, they concluded that the star is the fifth closest known brown dwarf to us, 17 light years toward the constellation Antilla. This distance, together with Spitzer's measurements, told the astronomers that the object was both cool and extremely dim. But something was puzzling. The brightness of the object was twice what would be expected for a brown dwarf with its particular temperature. The solution? The object must have twice the surface area. In other words, it's twins, with each body sharing only half as bright, and each with a mass of 30 to 40 times that of Jupiter. Both bodies are 1 million times fainter than the Sun in total light, and at least 1 billion times fainter in visible light alone. These brown dwarfs are the lowest power stellar light bulbs in the sky that we know of, said Burgasser. And like low-energy fluorescent light bulbs, they emit most of their light in a narrow range of wavelengths. In this case, in the infrared. Comment. Burgasser's description of brown dwarfs as low-energy fluorescent light bulbs is the closest he comes to the truth. Like fluorescent lights, brown dwarfs require electricity. And the solution to the problem is simple. A single red dwarf with an extended red anode glow can provide the extra brightness without postulating an unlikely twin. The report continues. According to the authors, there are even dimmer brown dwarfs scattered throughout the universe, most too faint to see with current sky surveys. NASA's upcoming video field infrared survey Explorer mission will scan the entire sky at infrared wavelengths and is expected to uncover hundreds of these inconspicuous characters. The holy grail in the study of brown dwarfs is to find out how low can you go in terms of temperature, mass, and brightness, said Davy Kirkpatrick, the co-author of the paper at NASA's Infrared Processing and Analysis Center in California, Institute of Technology, Pasadena. This will tell us more about how brown dwarfs form and evolve. Comment. In an electric universe, stars do not evolve. The notion of stellar evolution and the age of stars is an invention of the standard thermonuclear model of stars. And for so long as scientists cling to an unworkable theory of stellar formation by gravitational accretion, new findings will serve only to add to the confusion. 2 + 2 = 7. I predict that further discoveries by the Wide Field Infrared Survey Explorer in this category will require the same ad hoc assumption that the radiant surface area based on standard theory must be accomplished by multiple star systems. The odds against finding so many multiple systems will become astronomical. Success for the electrical model of white dwarf stars. Yeah, this is the same thing I'm talking about on Solaria. The main sequence is the backbone of the observations, but there are sharp discontinuities between the main sequence and giant stars and white dwarfs. In the standard thermonuclear model of stars, the explanations for these discontinuities are beset by many observational discrepancies and ad hoc patches. In the electric star model, such discontinuities are a natural feature of a plasma discharge. Main sequence stars operate like arc lights in a cinema projector. The plasma discharge at their photospheres is in arc mode. The main sequence is a direct result of increasing the current density at the surface of the star. The red supergiant Betelgeuse is dimming. Will the bright star Betelgeuse finally explode? A look at the dimming red giant in Orion's shoulder. It can't hurt to look up at the night sky, just in case. Well, one of the brightest stars in the sky has been dimming. But while it might be signaling that it's ready to explode, it's probably just fading because of strange stellar physics. Betelgeuse, a reddish star that's one of the brightest in the night sky, has been noticeably fainting or getting dimmer. The approximately 8.5 million-year-old star, which is part of the Orion constellation, has been one of the most recognizable stars in the sky because of its brightness and coloration. But this recent dramatic fading has prompted scientists to suggest that the star might be entering a pre-supernova phase, dimming before it collapses and dies in fiery supernova explosion. If the star does become a supernova, Betelgeuse, I know some people say Betelgeuse, I guess it's just a tomato thing, would likely be as bright as, or even brighter than the moon for weeks. At 642.5 light years from Earth, it would be the closest supernova observed and recorded by humans, closer than the Crab Nebula, which is 6,523 light years from Earth, and is the result of a supernova reported to have taken place in AD 1054. This also means that if we see Betelgeuse explode tonight, the supernova really took place over 600 years ago. We're only seeing it now. It's a nice picture. Will Betelgeuse explode? The brightest stars in the sky. It'd be brilliant. The star would be so bright that it would make it difficult to see other stars near it. Edward Ginnon, a professor of astronomy and astrophysics at Villanova University, who reported the dimming, in an astronomer's telegram, told Space.com, it would be the brightest supernova ever observed in our galaxy. But will we really see Betelgeuse explode? A massive dimming star. It's not surprising that the extremely massive star, which is likely about 20 times the mass of the Sun, has been dimming, because it's a variable star, meaning its brightness naturally shifts, something that scientists have observed for decades. The star has been classified a red supergiant star because of its size. However, with this recent dimming, the star's brightness kept going down beyond the limits that we scientists ever saw. It went outside of its usual parameter or comfort zone, Ginnon said. It's dimming a lot more than we've seen. Serafina Nance, an astronomy graduate student who studies Betelgeuse and stellar explosions at the UC Berkeley, told Space.com, but does that dimming foretell an explosion? We know massive stars like Betelgeuse will explode as a supernova. The question is, when? There really haven't been close observations of them, supernovae, before they go off, Ginnon said. He explained that while some think that there wouldn't be any visible major changes in the star until just hours before it blows up, others think that it would start to dim about a year before exploding. There's no true consensus. While it's possible that the star could explode any time between now and 100,000 years from now, this dimming might not actually be a sign that it's about to blow. Both Nance and Ginnon said, that's a really nice picture. Shows you how much bigger it is than the Sun. Holy smokes, it's a monster. It almost looks like it's exploding now. If it looks like that. Artist visualization shows Betelgeuse as it is revealed by new observation techniques with ESO's Very Large Telescope. Well, then show the images with the telescope. A false alarm. He acknowledges that it could explode soon, and this dimming could be a sign that the explosion may happen relatively soon. I believe it is going to blow up now, Ginnon said. I believe it isn't going to blow up now, Ginnon said. I hope it does, but my bet is that it's not going to. It's going to come back up, get brighter again. Nance admits we could absolutely be wrong. She said, referring to her theory, that the dimming is not a sign that the star is about to explode. That said, I do think that this is more indicative of really interesting physics that's going on with the star rather than an imminent explosion. If it does explode and we're wrong, awesome. I would love to be wrong. I would love to see that, Nance said. While it would be pretty amazing to witness the ultra-bright transformation of such an enormous and close star into supernova, Ginnon said it seems more likely that this dimming does not indicate a pre-supernova phase and can be explained in another way. Food for thought. What if the Sun is connected to Betelgeuse and it gets its electrons from it? What would it do? Something to think about. According to Nance, if they wouldn't want it to blow up then, would they? According to Nance, no one is exactly sure why this stellar fainting is happening. It could be caused by instabilities within Betelgeuse. She explained that different parts of stars can have different densities. And this density instability can cause energy to rise and fall within a star, moving energy from its inside to its outside. This, in turn, can cause changes in brightness, cause the star to get bigger and to contract, and much more. Nance added that this extreme dip in brightness could also be attributed to magnetic activity in the star. We know magnetic has to be electric, but it is difficult to model that activity through simulations, so they do not yet know if that is the definite factor. She even added that it's possible that matter ejected from the star is creating a sort of dust fog that's currently obscuring and dimming the star. The likely lack of nearby explosion might make this star seem less interesting, but Nance thinks just the opposite. I think that this is really interesting to watch and really interesting from a physics perspective of trying to better understand how massive stars experience periods of variability, she said. You should still look up. Now, while both Nance and Guinan think that it's most likely that Betelgeuse is just displaying a dimmer appearance because of some interesting stellar physics, they also agree that an explosion in our lifetime is still possible. It's worth it to look up and look for the dimming star in the night sky. While I don't think it's going to explode anytime soon, Nance said, I'll keep my eye on it just in case. We don't know what's going to happen. Well, there are absolutely limits to our models, she said. I'm going to look up at the night sky and check that it's still there every time I go outside, even if it is in a pre-explosion phase. It's exciting to watch the star now as it dims. It's kind of neat to see astrophysics or astronomy and stellar evolution in action, Guinan said. These changes are usually so slow that you can't observe them. Meet Elma. Amazing photos from the giant radio telescope. And that was from space.com. Thank you, space.com. And I have some comments. I'm not going to read them. Well, we believe that stars are electric. And when they're dimming, it's just like they're getting more juice and then getting less juice. It seems a lot simpler, doesn't it? All right, I'm going to take a real elementary approach to what I think is going on in a star. All right, now that picture right there, if I said to you, just about every one of you that are
young star, so to speak, under the convention, the transformation defines discharge activity out.
Why is that? Well,
then above that you have the energy flow, and of course it's normal to expect that incoming electrical energy will excite the plasma out here first, and then as it gets into the more dense atmosphere it will exhibit discharge activity. Out here it's a coronal glow, in here it's normal electric arc phenomena. So the energy to heat the electric sun comes externally from the galaxy. The electric discharge becomes intense close to the sun, heating the thin atmosphere of the corona to millions of degrees, and the superheated corona is a familiar glow discharge phenomenon recognised by high voltage engineers. Now we come to the HR diagram. It's based on observations, it's not based on theory. It's a scatter plot, not an evolutionary plot, and the luminosity and colour of a star depends on its size and the current density at its radiating surface. Discontinuities exist. You've got white dwarfs over here, red giants here, and red and brown dwarfs, which are all discontinuous with the main sequence. These are all stars with bright photospheres, so they have that regulating mechanism. Of course, the astronomer's got it back to front. If you do a mirror image, then you have a more understandable arrangement where the stars get brighter and bluer as you increase the current density, so that you get this straight line curve, which is exactly what you'd expect. Red stars have to expand. That's both red dwarfs and red giants. They're stars which are not collecting enough electricity to satisfy the discharge, so the plasma adjusts. It's like a living thing almost. It adjusts to its environment. And so it expands the anode sheath to collect enough current. And some of those anode sheaths are monstrous. You know, Betelgeuse, if that star was in our solar system, its photosphere reaches out to the orbit of Jupiter. White dwarfs, on the other hand, may be a normal-sized star, but they have no bright photosphere. Their upper atmosphere is in direct contact with the plasma of space. They have only a faint white corona. Imagine if the sun's photosphere turned off, you would see this white envelope, very faint, but very white, very high temperature in appearance. So stellar evolution is a fairy story. This is V838 Monocerotis. This erupting star transformed itself over a period of months from a small underluminous star, a little hotter than the sun, to a highly luminous, cool supergiant star undergoing rapid and complex brightness changes. This was the quote of the article describing it. The transformation defies the conventional understanding of stellar life cycles. It's a very complex story. I've been through it, the theory of it. So here's a red giant. This is actually Betelgeuse. It's 500 times the size of the sun, and it has a hot spot. You've got to ask yourself, what's a hot spot doing on a red giant star? What happens is as that envelope expands, the electric field grows stronger because it's trying to collect electrons from space. But on the other hand, positively charged particles, in other words, its stellar wind, are accelerated more strongly the other way. So you have this anomaly where these cool stars have the most powerful winds known. And if the stellar wind is being boiled off, so to speak, this doesn't make any sense at all. Betelgeuse sports a hot spot, and I've suggested it may be above one of its poles because one of the Alphane circuits shows that one of the connections of the electric circuit is to the poles of the star. So we may be staring at one of the poles. Giants and dwarfs, the usual story is that stars consume their fuel and change to giants or dwarfs. The story is complex, unverifiable, and regularly contradicted. This is another version of the HR diagram there. And astronomers are perpetually astonished by unexpected changes in stars. This is a white dwarf system. Sirius B is the white dwarf, and Sirius A, you'll see an optical light here. Sirius A is very bright in the sky, Sirius B is almost invisible, and it's a faint white, so-called white dwarf. Now, if you look at it in X-rays, it's the reverse. Here's Sirius B, it's brighter than its optically bright partner Sirius A. This is what you'd expect, where the discharge reaches into the ionosphere directly of a star. The X-ray output is high, the visual light output is low. And there's nothing special about that. It can be an ordinary star, it's just that its partner may have usurped most of the current. It's supposed to be a collapsed star at the end of its fuel. But how can an old and a young star be together? Because here you have an old and a young star, so to speak, under the conventional ideas, together. A white dwarf has no bright photosphere, its white light and X-rays come from an intense corona. Here's the different star types, and I've shown how I think they would look. A red dwarf is actually quite large. In other words, it's like a red giant in miniature. A red dwarf was discovered, and the astronomers decided it was putting out too much light for what they assumed was a dwarf star. So they said, oh, it must be a pair of red dwarfs of exactly the same size and power output. I suggested, no, it's a single red dwarf. It's just much bigger than anyone ever expected. Main sequence star, it is covered with photospheric tufting, tufted anode and a controlled discharge. Blue giants are a large star under high electrical stress. Red giants are a normal star under low electrical stress, and it develops a glowing plasma sheath. A white dwarf is a normal star in direct contact with space plasma and has low luminosity.
It's just like the lights, the Christmas lights on the outside of the house are being powered from an outlet that is plugged in to a power plant that could be hundreds of miles away. That power is coming from that power plant through the lines down into the home. And because these ratios of different elements, disk is oversized. Physicist and electric universe advocate Walt Thornhill also proposes an electrical model for Betelgeuse and red supergiant stars. In general, electric currents in space are primarily due to the flow of electrons through interstellar plasma and not the movement of positive ions. This means that stars are lacking in electrons because of a charge separation process. Stars can be considered positive anodes in a galactic glow discharge. Therefore, red stars are those stars that cannot satisfy their hunger for electrons from the surrounding plasma. So the star expands the surface over area which it collects electrons by growing a large plasma sheath. That becomes the effective collecting area of the stellar anode in space. The growth process is self-limiting because as the sheath expands, its electric field will grow stronger. Electrons caught up in the field are accelerated to ever greater energies. Before long, they become energetic enough to excite neutral particles they chance to collide with, and the huge sheath takes on a uniform red glow. It becomes a red giant star. Betelgeuse is an electric star, and the bright regions are areas where electric currents are flowing with the greatest amperage. Stephen Smith. All right. Thank you, Stephen. That was excellent. It never fails. Thunderbolts never lets us down, and hopefully that will help you. Chapter 15, The Jupiter Order. When Thor, the Scandinavian Jupiter, went into battle and would grasp the handle of his terrible weapon, the thunderbolt, or electric hammer, he was obliged to put on his iron gauntlets. He also wears a magical belt known as the Girdle of Strength, which, whenever girded about his person, greatly augments his celestial power. He rides upon a car drawn by 2 rams with silver bridles, and a wreath of stars encircles his awful brow. His chariot has a pointed iron pole, and the spark-scattering wheels continually roll over rumbling thunderclouds. He hurls his hammer with a resistless force against the frost giants, whom he dissolves and annihilates when he repairs to the Berndhar fountain, where the gods meet in conclave to decide the destinies of humanity. He alone goes on foot, the rest of the deities being mounted. He walks for fear that in crossing Bifrost, the rainbow, the many-hued Aesir bridge, he might set it on fire with his thunder car, at the same time causing the Erdhar water to boil. Blavatsky. The numerous electrical aspects of the god are here apparent. Of electricity, Blavatsky calls him lightning, is handled by numerous gods in religion. But altogether, these are insignificant compared with the references accorded Homer's Jupiter, the thunderbolter, alone. It is natural to see in this literature an exaggeration of ordinary lightning strokes. But we have already stressed in earlier chapters the cosmic role of lightning like discharges. When we see in the universe countless instances of stellar and interstellar binary currents produced by the discharge of accumulated electrical charges. Also, at any given time, there are several million electrical discharges in the photospheric region of the sun, each about 1 or 2,000 kilometers long and lasting 10 minutes. Crude mega lightning of hitherto unappreciated voltage has been observed by satellites in Earth's upper atmosphere, but has not been detected yet by ground observation. Terman. When legend reports the electrical activity of Jupiter, the god, it tells of the electronics of the planet Jupiter. Mountains are leveled or melted, sky monsters felled, citadels destroyed, the earth scorched, and armies sent fleeing. All the work of the king of the gods. Every lightning stroke to earth becomes a theophany, as in lightning-obsessed Etruria, which gave the name Jupiter, Jove Pater, to the Romans. Sacred manifestations consecrate the cosmic bolt that were memorialized and discussed for thousands of years. The planets, following the interruption of the magnetic tube, were freed. Instead of wheeling with Jupiter, now the binary component, they orbited the sun independently. Their motion close to the plane of the old binary, now the plane of the reconstituted solar system. In their free orbits, the planets avoided one another, and Jupiter, because of their electrical charges, which produced repulsive forces, when they came into proximity regularly, they passed through or close to the axis between Jupiter and the sun. Then Jovian thunderbolts were experienced. These could be the now occasional visible discharges of the dying binary, catalyzed by the presence of a charged planet in the path of the discharge. More likely, they were locally generated discharges between the planet and its electrosphere, induced by the planet's voyage through the electrified region within the invisible arc discharge between Jupiter and the sun. Either way, the planet was zapped by Jupiter as it came into opposition with the sun. From the Earth, for the first time, humans might see the other planets swinging on their journeys around the sun. Planet Jupiter, now viewed as ruler of the heavens, struggled to restore and maintain the arc connection to the sun. For a time, the arc flared with occasional visible spurts, but mostly the electric connection was dark. It is in this era, possibly, that the existence of a counter-Earth was proposed, a dark body which obscured the celestial fire. See behind chapter 6. Jupiter is the most phallic of the great gods. The association of electrical stimulation, phallicism, and thunderbolting is strongly linked to the religious rites in vogue at the time of Jove. Sigler. Phallic worship is common among the Jupiter-type deities. The Amun temples in Egypt are liberally decorated with images of the phallic god Min, Shiva, the Hindu equivalent of Jupiter, emasculated himself when he realized that his creative ability had left him. The analogy of this legend with the end of the visible electric arc is plain. The golden age of Saturn contrasts both culturally and physically with the bright, harsh age of Jupiter. We must explain brighter skies, a worsened climate, a larger role for sporadic electrical phenomena, and certain striking astronomical movements of Jupiter's Olympian family. The Earth emerged from the magnetic tube following the Saturnian deluge, about 5700 BP, with its rotational axis forcibly relocated. While in the tube, it was constrained to maintain a magnetic axis along the tube's perimeter. Freed from the tube, the magnetic axis found a new alignment in the magnetic field induced by the apparent motion of a charged sun about the Earth. This magnetism, albeit weak, established a new rotational pole on the Earth close to, if not coincident, with the Earth's magnetic pole. See the point. A small tilt and a relatively diffuse plenum made the variations in such sunlight as was released very noticeable on the Earth. In the altered system, seasonal differences in the earlier era were minimal compared to variations in climate now existent on the Earth and during the year. We have already suggested that the first lines of Genesis move quickly and possibly in a confused way. From a Uranian beginning to the age of Saturn, similarly, a second and different creation, which follows a few verses later without evident attempts to reconcile the two theories, begins in a Uranian setting of mist without rain. And before agriculture, man is made out of earth and placed in the luxuriant Garden of Eden in an innocent proto-human state of unabashed nudity and unself-consciousness. Man gave names to every creature and was given woman out of himself. The tree of life and knowledge, planted in the middle of the garden, and the four divided rivers of Eden are firm symbols of Saturn, corresponding to the electrical axis and the cross-sections of the Saturn disk. Talbot, page 120. The wily serpent that tempts Eve and Adam is the alter ego of the tree. The couple, eating the fruit of the tree upon the serpent's persuasion, became fully human, that is, possessed of self-awareness. Then the eyes of both were opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves aprons. Genesis 3:7. Thus, they freed from the magnetic tube at a time of the deluge. The rotation of the magnetized Earth was brought into alignment with the weak magnetic field generated by the relative motion of the electrically charged Earth-Sun pair. From the Earth, the charged Sun is seen to flow in a loop around the Earth in 1 year, representing an electron current flowing counterclockwise along the ecliptic, as seen down on the North Pole. Such an electron current creates a magnetic field, which enters the Earth at its north magnetic pole. This field parallels the Earth's magnetic field. The situation described here initially brought the Earth's magnetic and rotational poles together. The latter quantivolutions separated them again and tilted the Earth's rotational axis to the ecliptic. Also work. They feel conscience already, and the wrath of the deity for what they had already become, conscientious workers. He evicts them in axis, the winged lion-bodied gods of the Saturnian symbolism, and the twisting, flaming sword, the axis again in its more visible, sputtering phase. The Earth is now a drier, harsher habitat, where they had to wear skins rather than fig leaves. It is the age of Jupiter and of Yahweh to come. The cosmic thunderbolts of Jupiter function in clear skies. There is a Jupiter pluvius of the rains, but this is either one of his many powers, for he is overlord of all, or it is reminiscent of his having played a role in provoking the Saturnian deluge. The skies are clear because the plenum has greatly diminished in density. The heavens are transparent and the stars are seen. A new ice age may now have begun, centered at the rotational poles. Fossil settlements of the extreme north have been uncovered and enjoyed a tropical flora. See Velikovsky, 1955, page 44. They probably date from the Saturnian age. The new ice will remain advancing and withdrawing on occasions between and during encounters with celestial bodies up to the present time. Today, we cannot yet deduce whether the ice caps are increasing or decreasing. Compare Kukla and Matthews with Gribben, A. Brown, 1976. Solar year under Jupiter may have had a succession of different lengths. First occurred the Saturnian year, to which we have assigned a 64-day duration. That would explain why they could live to 1,000. Then it increased to 156 days when Jupiter receded. The Mayans possessed a 260-day sacred calendar that was central to their religious and cultural life, even while using a more modern and exact calendar. We attribute this sacred calendar to the Jupiter-Earth synods of this era, to the time before 4,400 years ago. At the Saturnian deluge, we suspect the Earth was around 96 gigameters from the Sun. It moved outwards constantly, after that to 107 gigameters, before the Mercury Apollo episode of 4,400 BP, then to 127 gigameters. As a result of that encounter, in the course of these changes, Earth's axial tilt was altered again and again. See the Shell, 1963, causing glacial retreats and advances to the extreme latitudes at each period. The Apollo episode is most speculative, considering the traits of Apollo. Grazia, 1984, associated him with the asteroid belt. We see no reason to alter the finding now. After 4,400 BP, Jupiter orbited within a space of the asteroid belt we know today. Briefly, Apollo is a great god of the Greeks. His equivalent identities are obscure. He may be Horus of the Egyptians, unless Amun, Jupiter, and Horus are the same. He owns no planet in late ancient times. He is a physically remote god, and a god of plagues and remote missiles and war. He is young and a son of Jupiter. He is wise and was literally brilliant, shining Apollo. The envied reputation of Apollo as the shining, brilliant, Hellenic god of peace and civilization coincides with the idea that he was destroyed. He could not become even Deus Otiosus, thereby exposing the sad human experience, howbeit unconscious that the only good god is a dead god. I looked up Deus Odiosus and at its idol god. It is conceivable that Apollo, a planet nearest to Jupiter in the second millennium of the Jovian age, was perturbed, then destroyed by Jupiter's thunderbolts. Apollo has solar attributes, which were in late classical times exaggerated, until he was often portrayed as the sun, a most unlikely identity. The shining of Apollo, as of his brothers, Hermes, Mercury, was most likely occasioned by flare-ups in close conjunction with Jupiter, prior to the outburst that destroyed the planet. Apollo, the god, often clashed with his father. To some, the asteroids look like bits of the residue of a large planet long ago exploded. The time of the asteroidal explosion is recent and floundered. Even under long time reckoning, It is very recent if placed in the context of the Greek legend. In this context, several events coincide and relate to the larger theory of Celeria Venerea. Apollo has a younger brother, mischievous Hermes, Mercury, who is a swift-winged messenger of Zeus, Jupiter, and the gods, who is connected with electricity, especially as Thoth in Egypt, the creator of illusions, mental problems, and is god of the thieves, travelers, and healing. He, too, becomes a great god, known to many, East Indians, Mexicans, Teutons, and others. Though Yahweh reflects Jupiter, he also has qualities of Thoth. Moses was probably a devotee of Thoth, and acts towards Yahweh as Hermes towards Zeus. DeGrazia, 1983. Astronomically, Mercury would have been next to Apollo, would have acquired atmosphere and debris from Apollo in the latter's outburst, then lost charge and would have been displaced to the Sun. In doing so, he would have passed by Earth and Moon, inflicting considerable damage upon both. The lobate scarps and shallowly scalloped cliffs that run for hundreds of kilometers across Mercury's face suggest shrinkage of this planet after formation. In contrast, Earth, Moon, and Mars seem to have expanded. In electrical terms, Mercury has lost charge, while the other three bodies have gained it, consistent with the orbit shifts proposed in this book. If indeed Apollo was destroyed, it must have been by Jupiter, which absorbed much of Apollo's material, so that a dearth of debris orbits in the space inside Jupiter's position today. Mercury seems to have escaped the full wrath of Jupiter. It was not destroyed, but it lost instead its superior orbit beyond the Earth and was flung much closer to the Sun. Like the Moon and Mars, it bears the marks of its devastation. Its surface is saturated with craters, strikingly similar in density of numbers to those on the Moon and Mars. Hammond. A discrete terminal episode of bombardment of catastrophic proportion has been proposed in an attempt to explain the similar surface destruction on these three astronomical bodies. Though some of these craters were caused by impacting bodies, especially during interplanetary encounters, they were in the main the result of the electrical bombardment. The thick clusters of craters found even in heavily cratered terrains bespeak genesis by electrical rather than heavy body impact. The crater lumps noted at the site of the lunar rays on the face of Mare Cognitum were the earliest for which a bombardment hypothesis would no longer avail. Yet, besides Jurgen's 1974, only Pickering has forwarded an electrical explanation for cratering. During changes in orbit, electrical transactions on an enhanced level are induced, unless a body is protected by an extensive atmosphere, and today, none of these are. Surface damage will result whenever electrical currents flow to or from them. Circuit 2. If the transactions are of great density, even the presence of an atmosphere will not guarantee immunity. When Mercury moved inward past the Earth, it was severely damaged, both by its change in orbit and its direct transaction with the bodies it passed. Even Mercury's present orbit is a mystery. According to gravitational tidal theory, the planet's axial rotation should long ago have been locked to give Mercury one hemisphere in perpetual daylight, the other in darkness. The discovery that Mercury rotates 3 times over 2 orbits of the Sun has evoked remarks like, "This is amazing, Asimov," and has led theoreticians to postulate that the planet has been in orbit in its present position for less than 600,000 years. Gold. The state of astronomical and geological time reckoning is such that 6,000 may be read in place of the longer time. Jupiter, like his father and grandfather, became a kind of deus atheosis, idol god, already majestic and less active in the Homeric wars of Troy. There was no longer a close presence. Philosophy and literature might usurp the regions of near space with abstract principles and metaphors. But among scientists today, Jupiter has suddenly recovered some of his legendary features. Astronomers for some time have considered this planet to be a dark star, nucleum, that it radiates considerably more energy than it receives as sunlight, has more recently led to speculation that it is a yet-to-be-born star. Both views keep alive Jupiter's stellar nature long after it has ceased to be visibly stellar. Today, the clouds above the surface of Jupiter are very cold, 150 Kelvin, yet the planet is very active. Electrically, Jupiter's magnetosphere is enormous. If it were optically visible, its size viewed from the vantage point of Earth's orbit would be comparable to the disk of the full moon. The ion and electron currents detected within the magnetosphere represent radiation levels which would be fatal to humans. The radio noises generated within this region are received at Earth as cosmic rays, mainly protons of Jovian origin. Jupiter is, so far, the most demonstrably electrical of the planets. Jupiter is like a miniature solar system, with its planet-sized Galilean satellites, its asteroid-sized satellite family, and its entourage of comets. Everywhere, the electrical imprint is there, and not always just by implication. The three inner Galilean satellites, Io, resembling Earth's moon in size, Europa, about 9/10 the size of the moon, and Ganymede, 8% larger than Mercury, orbit in 1-2-4 resonance. When any two meet on one side of Jupiter, the third is located oppositely behind Jupiter, or at quadrature to the pair. The resonance is seen less clearly in the motion of the fourth satellite, Castillo, slightly smaller than Mercury. The surface of each of these bodies is distinctive. See Smith. Io, seemingly, is close to being molten. It lacks craters, but shows over a dozen caldera-like scars, which were likened to active volcanoes when an eruption was observed during the flyby of Voyager 1 spacecraft, Morbido. An electrical flux tube through which a current of millions of amperes flows between Io and Jupiter, Stone and Lane, has been linked to Io's eruptions. The Voyager 1 spacecraft was aimed at this flux tube. As it encountered Io, it missed the tube by 7 megameters in what was labeled a navigational error. But more properly, in our opinion, the cause of the miss was an electrical perturbation, here a repulsion of the spacecraft by the tube. The persistent connection by the flux tube between Jupiter and its satellite Io is one of the last sites of cosmic thunderbolting between solar system bodies. Discharges frequently pass between these two bodies has been known for several years, since the advent of the radio telescope. When strong radio bursts which correlate with Io's position about Jupiter were detected, Bulk that a passing spacecraft was located advantageously to photograph the flash of one of these discharges was happy happenstance. The glow was interpreted by some experts as evidence of volcanism, apparently to think that we have witnessed directly the fire of the gods. A cosmic discharge would seem to be too frightening. Jurgens, 1980. Jupiter discharges only to Io today, but its repertoire and gamut may have been more extensive not too many centuries ago. Photographs of Europa show it to have lobate scarps resembling those on Mercury, Smith. Perhaps Jupiter zapped it, causing it to shrink upon loss of charge. Castillo, the outermost of the four, is one of the most cratered objects in the solar system, likely the result of thunderbolts striking it. Ganymede, the second closest of the four, shows a banded surface pocked with ancient craters, then overlaid with younger bright-rayed craters, which stand out prominently. Distinct electrical scars resembling the rayed craters of Earth's moon, also seen on Mercury, which Jurgens, 1974, ascribes to cathode behavior when interplanetary discharges occur. Additional description of Jupiter's electrical nature, especially as it affects the asteroids and comets, has been afforded by Milton, 1982. The present behavior of the dark remnant of Super Uranus is, in sum, fully in keeping with the pure electrical theory of the solar system and the historical reconstruction of Solaria Venerea. End of chapter. The next chapter will be chapter 16, Venus and Mars. I'm enjoying this book. I hope you are too.
Yes, I'm about at the end, being able to hold my eyes open with toothpicks. I wanted to be able to hang out longer, but I didn't have enough coffee. Alright, I'm just gonna go, because I'm gonna try to get some rest. I got that big test on the 5th. I know I'll be okay then. Thank you for tuning in. Appreciate it. Watching the channel because of what it is. And
Surratt argues in his book Atlantis and Reign of the Giants that scientists at any one time and over centuries offer different and differing theories and interpretations about everything from the nature of celestial body to the composition of atomic particles. But he also argues that the human imagination is a source of knowledge that is consistent. It continues to bring forward new forms of ancient schemes. Among such schemes are views of Atlantis, the deluge, the giants. There is no discussion at this point at the nature of imagination or intuition. He states that science is what a scientist says it is, a view that came into its own 2 decades later. Science is a social construct. By failing to distinguish between science as a body of knowledge and science as an embodiment of a method, a self-correcting mode of inquiry if done right, the notion of measurement goes out the window. By failing to distinguish between science as a body of knowledge and science as an embodiment of a method, a self-correcting mode of inquiry, the notion of measurement goes out the window. This leaves the door unlocked for popular theories that seem to account for a wide array of prehistoric and ethnographic anomalies. Orbigaryism, the cosmogony of the Austrian engineer. According to Zacharias Sitchin, a race of super beings who about 450,000 years ago landed on Earth and created the human race to act as slaves to mine for the gold that they so desired. These human-like beings were the inspiration for the gods of ancient times, and they bear such names as Marduk, Enlil, Enki, Osiris, Seth, etc. They are described in Akkadian and Sumerian texts as the Anunnaki, and they are named in Genesis the Elohim and Nephilim, those who from heaven to earth came, or fallen ones, or men. In the book of Genesis, the Egyptians knew them as the Neter. Their males cohabited with female apes, and through genetic engineering created the human race. It is a complex story, and their presence are recorded in the ancient texts of the world's major religions. It seems they were giants. I don't think we have any part of us in us that's an ape. I don't think we come from apes. Maybe aqua apes, but not savanna apes. Next to the theory of Velikovsky and Sitchin, Surratt's reaches based largely on the writings of Bellamy and Allen are tame stuff. I wish they wouldn't put Velikovsky with Sitchin. They have nothing in common, except they're both from Russia. Yet they predated the works of these Russian thinkers and appeared in 2 books originally published in regular editions. That's good enough. He reads the books that convey his speculations on planetary formation and the evolution of various species of early life in a style characterized by high spirit, dramatic expression, bold exaggeration, and disdain for the accepted opinions of the scientific establishment. I like that. Readers today rarely encounter the original editions and have to make do with mass-market paperback reprint editions with bright maroon and gold covers. Copies were issued in the tens of thousands by Surratt. They flooded the French language book market and brought Surratt's name into a sphere of controversy. Surratt wrote with equal fluency in French and English. There's a lot of that book that I enjoyed, and that is Atlantis and the Giants. He has another one that I would like to check out, but it's in French, and that is Planet of the Insects. I wish I could read a little bit of that. It sounds interesting. It consists of about 2/3 of the text, original French. Missing are chapters on the relevance of his argument to theosophical ruminations, dream analysis. Did you notice that when you talk about Atlantis and Lemuria, you're always really close to the Rosicrucians or the Theosophists? It seems to go like hand in hand for some reason. I haven't figured out why yet. They must really think it. Here he gets, I don't know, a little bit kind of off the tracks for a minute. Let's see. For convenience's sake, the earlier lunar bodies will be referred to as Luna 1, Luna 2, and Luna 3. Present lunar body would be called the Moon. Its future successors will be termed Moon 2, 3, etc. The lunar bodies ancestral to our Moon are believed to be 3 in number, as suggested by the evidence from geological records. Well, you see, that could just easily be planets. From archaeological remains,
Yes,
from ethnological reports, folk beliefs, and from the intact record of the imagination of man. What there is of it. There may have been more than 3 early lunar bodies, perhaps as many as 5, 6, or 7. Whatever their number, the fate of each satellite was the same. It wanders in from the solar system. It approaches the orbit of the Earth. It is captured by the Earth's gravitation. Eventually, its orbit begins to decay. It orbits closer and closer to Earth. It breaks up, leaving a trail, rather like the rings of Saturn. Oh, how convenient that he mentioned Saturn. You know, our moon isn't getting closer. It's getting further away. Whatever remains eventually crashes into the Earth. Okay. These crashes are cataclysmic in terms of the planet and embed evidence in the geological record. But what is unprecedented in the scenario thus described, as interpreted through Bellamy and Allen and Surratt, is that during the eons of orbital decay, the gravity of the lunar body raises the planet's water level in a belt around the equator, reducing the mountain peaks to mere islands in a near global sea. This tidal bulge accounts for features of early life forms. After each cataclysm, the rate of the Earth's rotation around the Sun is changed, so that under tertiary conditions, under Luna 3, until its crash, and the capture of the Moon, a day was longer than a day is now. For 290 days comprised the solar year, a detail noted by students of the ancient calendars of Tiwanaku. Well, we think that it was a drama with planets, but it's okay, you know. You still never know what you might learn. Periods of decreased gravity accelerated species evolution, as recorded by the fossil record, and what creates fossils. For instance, the primary period produced giant plants and insects. The secondary period produced giant animals. The third period produced the mammals, notably a giant race of what might be termed near men. Tertiary period has been equated with the Pleistocene, so it concluded some 30,000 years ago. I remember seeing something about a Pleistocene comet too that crashed into Greenland. The capture of the present moon is said to have occurred about 12,000 years ago, apparently well within the ancestral record of man. Thus, creationists should be heartened to read that there was a Noahian flood, but disheartened to learn that there were at least 2 earlier near-global deluges. Evidence exists wherever it may be encountered. How else is one to explain the anomalies to be found on the shores of Lake Titicaca? The Tiwanaku civilization was that of an advanced society of early seafarers, despite the fact that in their site today, located in the Andes, is one of the highest on Earth. They left behind gigantic ruins of structures that seem to have served the needs of giants. Such construction may still be found there. Also on Easter Island, at Karnak, and Stonehenge, and on some Pacific islands. The giants that arose during the period of Luna 2 were the good giants. Those that arose during Luna 3 were the bad giants. Another word for good giant is god, for bad giant, ogre. And in Greek philosophy, the first are the Titans, the second the Olympians. In the dreams of the human species, the Golden Age lives on. Atlantis is the name that Plato gave to the legend of one specific sunken city, but it may well be applied to any. The legend of one to any and all the deluged places and civilizations of early men and giants, the casualties of successive creations. Is primitive man a newcomer to the planet, or is he a survivor of a previous calamity? And the giants? It seems they came from mountainous regions of the planet that enjoyed decreased gravity. They resembled human beings in most ways, but stood between 12 and 15 feet high. The earliest giants assisted mankind. The later ones thwarted them. Those beings that did not die of natural causes or from accidents were hunted down by men and killed. Samson and Goliath are the names of remembered giants of the distant past, just as the names and deeds of Kronos and Zeus are preserved in ancient myth. There is evidence of the use of advanced technologies by man in the prehistoric past, as well as evidence that leads one to infer the existence of the race of giants with a race of men. Particularly suggestive are the gigantic stones and monoliths studied by archaeologists among the Malekula group in New Guinea and the structures of the Toltecs in present-day Mexico. We assume that science is a feature of the modern world, and it certainly is, but ancient peoples had their own forms of science. For there are many sciences, using the plural word in the sense of explanations, and not necessarily natural or realistic explanation or rationalistic explanation. The sciences of earlier civilizations were of psychic or spiritual in nature, whereas ours is one of the physical or material variety. Common to ancestral tradition and the beliefs of ancient peoples is the view that the civilization of the world, far from progressing, is in the state of decline, almost to the point of barbarism, I'll say. The modern view is that history is the record of progress from the world dominated by superstition to one guided by rationality and science. Hardly. We're still emotional and superstitious. But the traditionalist interpretation is that we are witnessing a disastrous decline in quality in the face of the rapid rise of quantity. Amen. It's been like that for, it's a long time, but just mostly for the last 20 or 30 years. Everything has to be supersized. Everything is always about size. It's ridiculous. Legends of senior civilizations in the past, lost technologies of great power, sunken cities of incredible beauty, and survivors of giant races. In fact, it's pretty safe to say we have everything just about upside down, don't we? All of these and more are preserved in traditions of the world's ancient peoples. The existence of giants is taken for granted by the author of Genesis and other books of the Bible. The mythology of ancient Greece offers the 4 ages of man, which could have been inspired by dim recollections of, at the very least, the collision of Luna 3 with the Earth, or Venus. Confirmations are found, or near collision, in the form of artifacts and legends, and the beliefs of ancient Egypt, the Semitic peoples, Abyssinia, Rwanda, China, and Tibet. The argument is taken thus far in the 10 chapters that appear in Atlantis and the Giants. Reading between the lines, it is possible to see that the arguments should be taken with a grain of salt. The author is well aware that nothing remains the same for long. Indeed, it does not. As well, adapting at reading literary texts and entering into the imaginary worlds of writers of poetry and fiction, he finds it easier to accept and remain within the general conceit than step outside it and access it. It is useful to quote the conclusions he reaches. Even if all this should prove to be wrong, in 20 or 30 years' time, which seems to be a very long lifetime for an idea in these fields, we shall remain grateful to Horbiger for being the first to give us a reasonable picture. A departure platform which enabled us to travel back 30,000 years, back to Tiwanaku and the Giants. Even if Horbiger, Bellamy, and myself are entirely in error, other things, undreamt of, have happened on the face of the earth, not so very different from our imaginings. There may have been no Horbigerian satellites, no Bellamy savages, and no giants, but there must have been planets most mysteriously formed, human beings full of inconceivable tricks and ideas, monsters 15 feet high using highly complicated tools and looking astonishingly like men.
And I'm going to give anybody who wants to meet me in there and Andy, are you about? Medusa? Shockwave?
How about we put them in a garbage? I can't bring back to them.
Greg, can you hear me?
No, I'm gonna leave my car. No, it's all right. I'll put them on the front back
Hello,
seat.
Greg.
No, it's all right. Well, I know you're gonna have your seat. How about we just put
There?
them on the back seat?
Yeah,
Put them on the
Oh.
side.
There you got me.
Yeah.
Well, just been sitting back listening to you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you for the chance.
Yeah, that might be better.
Just step on
Well,
top.
thank you
Yeah.
for hanging out.
I am, it's alright. Yeah. Nick's floating about. I don't know if he's coming in to say good day or not.
That's what I was thinking, probably. You guys, you and him.
Yeah. Yeah, so. Here he is. Yeah. There you go. Look at that.
Medusa, my man. Now when you use Shockwave, you gotta.
Uh,
How you doing, buddy? How's the move going?
oh, I'm in the middle of it, pal, and it's like rain for 40 days and 40 nights since it unfroze.
Oh,
So,
tell me, fill us in.
I'm pretty flooded in. I've got my main structure up now. I've dug the land up, got the main structure out, got it fairly waterproof. Apart from everything's totally waterlogged.
Are you like?
Although
going
it's on
off
top of a
grid?
hill. Yeah.
You completely off grid? Wow, that's cool.
I'm not there completely yet. Tuesday night I'll leave this house and then I'm off grid.
You know, it's a wonder
So-
they allow it. You know, because they're so profit orientated. You'd think they'd make.
Oh, they
more.
don't, Greg.
Oh, they don't.
So it's a bit of an adventure, you know.
Yeah.
I can get away with it just a bit if I'm clever. But that's what I'm doing. But yeah, it's a bit of an adventure, I suppose. But I think we're all in for a bit of an adventure this coming year or two, anyway. So
Well, yeah, and for sure. Me right away, man. 5th, I gotta go get that thing done. I don't like talking about it, but it's on my mind. I can't help it.
you having your jaw looked at? Are you?
No, I had to make an appointment for a CAT scan and biopsy. And the nurse called me Friday and said, you know, it's going to be about a 4 hour. I'm going to be there about 4 hours. Be slightly
Right.
slightly under. And I said, so like, do you get a lot of these? She goes, oh yeah, we get a lot of everything. I'm like, well, I mean, what's the odds? She goes, well, I wouldn't know till I looked. Okay. I was kind of hoping she'd give me a little, you know, some kind of a shot in the arm to get me through and stop worrying, you know, but I think I'm okay.
Yeah. Well,
I don't have any.
yeah. Well, try and keep your mind off it anyway, Greg. And you know, these statistics aren't always you know, what they seem. I mean, it's like normally you've got to go in and tell a doctor what's wrong with you, haven't you? If you can't diagnose you yourself, the doctors. So unless you have the CAT scan and all the rest of it, where they can see a problem, then they've got to be certain that what they identify as a problem is the problem, and all the rest of it.
It's almost like if you look for something in anyone, you might find it. I don't know, you know.
Well, that's the way I see it sometimes, you know, really. So, So it's unless it's a completely 100% diagnosis, you know, I wouldn't even go with it as being fact.
Right.
You know, you kind of know yourself, don't you?
I mean, wouldn't that
You
be
know,
like just a nightmare? I mean, the worst nightmare. You go in, you get told some really crappy news. I know it's not going to happen, but anything's possible in this world.
well, that's it. I
Greg,
think we're
Greg,
here to express all forms of emotion and in life, aren't we? That's our mission. So we've got to go through the whole gamut,
We don't
join the pain, the whole lot of it.
we don't know how long we're going to be here, and we don't know what's going on inside of us. And
No.
what you can do is play the percentages and do the things that are right, and you'll last longer. At least that's what I'm hoping.
Yeah, I think we're all on the seat of our pants, you know, skating along on the butt of on our on the butt of our pants. You know, it's I think we're all doing that.
Well,
But
the
happy
man
days anyway.
normally
It's an
is.
adventure.
I'm sorry.
It's an adventure, Greg.
What does that mean?
Oh,
It's
it's
an
an
adventure.
adventure. Robinson
it's
Crusoe.
it's an adventure. I thought you were saying something else. Yeah, well, I guess you could say that.
yeah, just find ways to stay positive.
Yeah, that's what I do.
That's really all you can do.
I've been active too. Like I said, I have no others. It's really crazy. Maybe Nathan. I think he just said it to make me feel better, but he said that there's a epidemic of people walking around right now with a swollen lymph node somewhere. I'm like, really? Well, maybe it's vaping. Because I did read that there's a chemical in vaping that causes swollen lymph nodes.
Well, I think pharyngitis is one of the side effects, vaccine side effects as well.
Yeah, so
There's a
I completely.
massive increase in pharyngitis, like sore throats.
Yeah, I don't get that. I never get a sore throat, man. I make my living with my throat. You know, I read and sing and do all that stuff, but that would be oh man, that would be a cruel blow.
Well, let's hope it's just a throat infection, Greg, and treat it as such. You know.
Yeah. But I don't. It's not sore or irritated or you know nothing. I feel fine.
At least you're getting a check, Greg.
Yeah.
That's the main thing. You know?
Yeah, that's what that nurse said. Even if it is something.
And then if it is anything and they get it early, it's fixed.
Hopefully, you catch it early.
That's right, if it is anything to worry about.
Right. But,
Yep.
some things.
But us mere males, we tend to wait till the last minute. Eh?
Yeah.
Totally.
Well, they sent me around. I had to make the rounds and make sure everybody got paid. First, they sent me for what was that? Echocardio, or what was that? What was that? They ultrasound. Yeah, the ultrasound told my doctor that I had a mass in my neck. Well, he already knew that, so he sends me to a specialist. The specialist, the internist. He says, "Huh? They think you have cancer." I'm like, why would you say that to me? What a professional.
Well,
Like,
I'd rather them be honest.
just like,
Greg, I'd rather them be honest.
Oh, it scares you into paying anything you've got to get it cured. That's why they say that.
yeah, it's like, what,
And,
what a
and if-
shitty
and if-
bedside manner he had. Man.
Well, that's he wants the money.
Well, you got
No,
it.
it's-
And then they send me for cat. Why didn't they just send me for a CAT scan from the first place?
Well,
What's going to be next? An MRI?
it's just you're going through a money grabbing system. That's what, and they're all getting the chunk as you go through. That's right.
Yeah, that's right. We're crazy.
That's how they do it.
That's the way it's set up.
I've been in good health all my life, though. I don't expect anything bad to happen. But I'm still athletic. I still play sports. And, I get around pretty good. A lot of people have a hard time believing that I'm as old as I am because I'm so spry. Like young at mind, young at heart. But
Yeah.
but still, I know that I know people who never smoked, drank, or anything, and they're already gone. So I don't. We just never know. We just never know.
No. So I take it, Nick, it's been pretty cold and wet over your neck of the woods.
Yeah, it's been absolutely terrible.
Why?
Oh.
Has it been raining all that time?
Yeah, it's been raining. I think we had 12 hours without any rain a couple of days back, but it's just been heavy rain. Probably 5 inches in the last 2 weeks up here, I would think.
In the wintertime, like they say, London fog. Is that you guys get a lot of rain and fog, don't you?
No. Well, it's mist where I am because I'm up on the hill. I'm 700. I'm up on the Pennines. It's misty. So the clouds come very low. You know, you just sat in cloud basically.
Living on the mountaintop now, are you?
Well, yeah. It's not, yeah.
The wise man on the mountain.
Well,
I don't know about
Making
wisdom.
pilgrimages to you and shit.
Well, they better not make too many pills. They'll be going back down the hill quicker than they come up anyway. If they do.
Yeah, unless they got a pint. Yeah.
Yeah, I went up there yesterday, Greg, and there was a 3 deer there, right next to where I'm living,
Oh, yeah, that's
and one of them was just stood there looking at me, only probably about 20 feet away. Looked like it had never had kind of it was just so curious, looking straight at me.
Well, they must be used to humans.
No, I don't think so because.
Just didn't feel threatened by you.
Yeah, it was strange. They don't often just stop and look straight in your eyes, you know, from about 10 yards away.
The deer in Michigan are nervous. We have
Yeah.
gun hunting season in November, you know.
Oh, totally.
They take about 750,000 deer out of the woods every November. And we got deer crossing the street and getting hit by cars in the city. Okay?
Yeah.
You know, they multiply like rabbits.
Yeah, but it's good meat. It's good fresh meat. It's not pumped full of all the steroids and all that lot, is it? It's
That's right. Yeah. Venison's a little strong for me. I've had it a couple times. I'm not crazy about it.
yeah.
depends how you cook it. You got to remember,
Yeah,
it's sort of the European type food, and if you cook it like that, then so it's how you prepare it.
I heard you
Yeah, it is.
soak it in salt water to take the wild taste out of
You've got to cut the glands out of the armpits and the legs, or else it'll ruin the meat. So you generally skin it pretty fast, but you remove these glands out the arms and legs.
it. Yeah, I've had the misfortune to gut a deer. I've done it.
I've had the best way to cook it that I've had is in a big clay pot with just shallots, garlic, full bottle of red wine, and chopped venison, and just let it stew for 3-4 hours, and that's absolutely delicious.
Yeah.
Delicious.
I used to deer hunt in my 20s until I killed my first deer. 4-point buck. And I felt so bad I just stopped.
Yeah.
Just wasn't
Well, that's it. I've never really enjoyed killing stuff, but I will if I need to eat something, you know.
right.
I've never really. I always felt a bit sick after killing something, you know.
Oh, no doubt. It's hard. Yeah.
But you know, when you you just got to give thanks for the food that you're eating, and it's beautiful food, and you can taste that the thing had an happy life,
You know,
and
my hunter
so you
friends-
just got to thank your blessings, haven't you?
Yes. My hunter friends always tell me, I say, how do you do that, man? It's like, well, I don't know. What do you think? That stuff you buy at the store is like, just falls out of the sky. It's gruesome what they do to cows.
Yeah.
It is. Too.
Yeah.
Think about it.
And yeah, They're such happy animals. I've still got my dog just about.
Yeah, I pretty
Sleeps,
much almost quit eating red meat though. I'm just not crazy about it anymore like I used
Oh, excuse me.
to be. So what's new with you now? Have you? What do you mean? Like you're halfway moved out and in, or what?
Uh,
What's your status?
well, yeah. Well, the house that I'm in is empty now, apart from the bed that I'm keeping in, and my clothes,
Uh-huh.
and so, yeah. Well, that's it. And I've got this. This house has got to be totally empty by Tuesday, and then the new people are going to move in on Thursday. So I've got a tree in the garden that I want to take with me, but I don't know if I'll be able to get that out. And 3 massive big pieces of stone that I want to take with me. But that's going to be a bit of a struggle.
Yeah. What kind of stone is it?
It's pieces for I'm going to make steps out of them, or lintels, and between 4 and 5 feet long, and 8-inch by a foot wide, and so I'll make some really nice set of stone steps out of them
Oh, I see.
if I can get them over there. Well, they probably weigh about £400 each, 400 £400, I would think those.
Oh, yeah.
A bit too heavy for me.
You know, to chain them to the car or something, dragging there.
Yeah, it's going to be something like that.
It'll be broken up rocks by the time you get there.
Yeah. But it's great. It's absolutely beautiful. Though. I'll send you photos, Greg. It's
Yeah,
great.
I'd like to see that. I love the countryside in England. I really do. It's very quaint. It's very.
Yeah,
it's hard to explain.
It's a bit like that Hobbit. It's a bit like what you see on the Hobbit
Yeah.
at times.
Yes. It's very cute. Even the towns are handsome. They're all nice and neat in the yards and the pub. Everybody goes to the pub. Shoot, man, that's awesome. We don't have that.
Yeah, well, that's the last vestiges of the culture. That's all ended now. It's just everywhere's just turning into a bump. And
The bars
yeah. Pubs are great, but they've all had to turn into restaurants now to keep going. There's that many regulations, they use the pub landlords as the police almost, to enforce various codes. And
The poet in the pub. There was a guy, he used to be on Rich Planet. They called him the poet in the pub. He always make these sarcastic poems up, when he's drinking his beer.
yeah.
I don't hear much about Richard anymore, Richard Hall. I thought he was going to get big, but I guess not.
Well, he must have to keep his head reeled down because
Oh yeah, but
he was the first to most of these stories, wasn't he?
anti-establishment all the way. I mean, he just
Yeah.
never stops.
No.
He's got balls of steel.
Yeah, he has. Yeah.
Calls up the police department and rips them a new ass.
Yeah. Well, there's this. Have you? I don't know if you've ever seen this. Heard of a comedy show called The Young Ones.
Yep, I've seen it.
Well, the Rick
I remember.
Mayall. Well, Rick Mayall, Andy, who wrote that, he died about 5 years ago.
Greg, what was it you wanted me to ask Andy? Go ahead. Never. Go ahead.
Yeah, keep going, Zeus.
he wrote this story about 5 years ago, and it was kind of a short film, and it got edited, and yeah, there are excerpts of it on left on YouTube. But he said, I'll probably get killed for this. He says on the film, and yeah, and he was predicting basically 5 years ago what's happening right now in this film, and
He got killed.
yeah. And he was a fantastic comedian, very clever writer, you know.
What was his name?
Rick Mayall, RIKMAYALL.
It's not
It was the last
first-
piece of work. Sorry?
There was another comedian that was really funny and young and got killed too. His name was Bill Hicks.
Right, I've heard of him as well, I think, yeah.
He felt the Kennedy assassination killed. And
Wh- yeah.
died very young. Cancer.
Yeah.
Saved up in
Yeah, well, he was talking about the Twin Towers, Rick Mayall, and in this scenario, he's explaining.
How did he die?
Right, Nick.
Nick,
It's muted.
Nick, unmute.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
There. How did he die?
Rick died of a heart attack
Yeah, they have heart.
while he was out jogging.
Probably in tip-top shape too.
Yeah, he was.
Guy's out of shape.
He was out jogging in the country.
Somebody shot him with a heart attack gun.
Yeah,
Penetrates you with an ice dart and leaves no remnants.
that's the
So
one.
what did he do? What was his last piece, Nick, on the Twin Towers?
Yeah, it was describing the Twin Towers, but it was describing it in terms of a game of Jenga. And, you know, obviously, if you he's trying to get a Jenga tower to fall in on itself, like the Twin Towers did, when a chunk's taken out of it, you know. So that's how he was explaining it. But it's the last piece of work that he ever made.
What,
And,
his name was Rick Mayall?
Yeah.
I never heard of him. I'm surprised.
The young
Possibly
ones were
wouldn't
pretty
have.
funny.
Yeah.
They were.
I usually know the funny.
And they were
comedians.
full of energy too, Nick.
Yeah. Well,
Their
that
show
first
was
two series.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is
Yeah,
strange.
we used to get them out here.
Yeah, Greg was telling me about some very notorious gang or gangster that was out there in your parts, and he wanted me to ask you if you knew about him, but I forgot his name, so I'll have to wait.
All right.
Some famous gangster. You said you probably knew about
How
him.
long ago?
Hmm?
How long ago did he live?
60s and 70s, maybe?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe before that. See, I don't know. He told me about it, and he asked me. He said, "Does Andy know?" I said, "I don't know. I'll ask him." You know, but now I've forgotten it. So he's sleeping. So we'll have to talk. I'll tell you another time.
Yep.
He reads,
Oh, we had our.
he reads up on a lot of people, you know, that are different. You don't normally hear of, you know. Sorry, I don't have more information.
We had a good few. We had a good few over the years,
Yeah.
and you know, like as it's unravelled the last few years,
Mhm.
a big part of their success was crooked police.
Yeah.
So
They're all over the place.
it was like a hand in glove situation with a lot of them.
Yeah, what police force isn't corrupt?
Well, yeah, that's right. And there are a lot of people, I think, in jail that are probably more innocent than they're not.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know.
The police force is politicised. The
Yes,
the
that's
first time, because they work for government, they're also subject to politics now, which they never used to be. They were just there to serve the law, weren't they, at one point? But now they're travelling around for Black Lives Matter or the Green activist terrorists. They're on their side, but they decide on the little things which they would need to crush and the ones that they need to encourage. Rainbow kind of.
Yeah, that 24-hour news cycle, I don't really think it's doing society much good as a whole,
Well, it's all
because
bad.
it's allowing
It's all
everything.
bad.
It's allowing everything. Yeah, it's allowing everything to be politicised.
Yeah. I know. Anymore, it
Everything that
doesn't
comes
matter.
along-
You get a guy who says he's president, right? Half the people automatically hate him right from the start. And no matter what he does, he could feed everyone on earth and give everyone 50 grand in the country, and people would still hate him enough to want him dead. It's crazy. Did you
Yeah,
see,
which is point.
like when Trump was president, all the hand wringing and freaking like panicking the liberals were doing. Just
Yeah, it's disgusting.
hate mongering. I never seen anything like it. I didn't see
Well,
the other side do it when Obama was president. They criticized him, yeah, but they didn't, have hate picket lines and shit.
Well,
He had a way of bringing out everybody's like anger.
Well, how many prime ministers have you had, Nick, in the last 3 years? 4 or 5?
yeah,
One
far
last-
too many. Far too many. That's just in the Tory party. But then, that's the bloody Tory party for you.
How many
Right.
parties are in your government?
Well, it's meant to be a two-party system. But of course,
Don't you have the conservatives, the liberals, I can't remember all the names, but
yeah, there's three or four different parties, but
yeah.
you have a first past the post system, so it means the party with the most votes gets everything. So the powers that be, they just switch between Tory and Labour depending upon which is most suitable for big business.
So they
you'll-
never hire a conservative or
Well, yeah, the Conservatives are the Tories, and they're meant to be running it at the moment. But this Conservative Prime Minister that we've got now, Rishi Sunak, is more left wing than his opponent, if you know what I mean. Never mind all the Tories.
we
So
call
he's
them
kind of
rhinos.
he's a total rhino, if you want to call him that.
He's a rhino.
And they're all that in up each other's arses and in each other's pockets. It doesn't matter what party they're into anymore. It just depends which company they're representing, essentially,
Yeah.
over the people's interests, who they're meant to be there for.
Who they're beholden to for putting hundreds of thousands of dollars in their campaign fund.
Well, there's many reasons why they still need the public. They still need to be voted into office, for example. So the fact is, there's that much little interest in voting that's hardly a criteria for selecting anyone of these absolute mongs. They all come out of the same Klutz school, the same. They've all been groomed for office. You know what I mean? One way or another. Which means they're blackmailable, most of them. That's what that means.
It would seem so.
Groomed for office means they've been done. Had the back doors kicked in.
So, Greg, a way of describing it basically is the Tory party in England, the Liberal party here, I can't remember what the one Trudeau is in Canada, and your Republican party.
Yeah.
They like to promote themselves as the money managers. We're the best money managers for the country, and we'll make sure that things don't go broke. And and all that. But when they get into power and things get a bit difficult, they just spray money around worse than our Labor parties or your Democrats, as you would be aware, Greg. You haven't seen Biden give too many handouts to the people. Might be giving a lot to Ukraine, but not to the people. And it's the same. The Labor parties have the fear that they'll be seen as not financially astute, so they tend to be worse than the Tories or the Liberals.
Yeah, there's people who they criticize Trump for giving those stimulus checks because they say that it really made inflation take off, and it did take off. I don't know what stimulated it, but food is double now what it used to be.
Yeah. I wonder if the truth on inflation is that the fuel prices more than doubled because of the issues with energy and oil. Because you've got the issue with Russia, and also you've got the issue at the moment that nobody's drilling new wells. So maybe that's the real reason inflation's taken off, is because energy's getting so expensive.
Oh, of course it is.
Nick could explain how bad it is.
Well, I can't really, but I've heard that they tried to get this other 4,500 page document through the House of Representatives, so they can to issue another 1.2 trillion spending on. I don't know what you're meant to be spending it on. 1.2 trillion, and
oh yeah, an election year is coming up. Yeah, they got to do something.
Well, they gave they produced this document of 4,500 pages, and then they had.
Like they're doing their job.
Well, then they had 4 hours to read it and vote on it.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
4 hours to read 900 pages, please.
4,000 pages.
Yeah.
Which would take you a couple of months.
Yeah,
But so they've all voted anyway, having not read anything in the document. They can't possibly have done. But the thing is, you see, all these government agencies and groups, different factions, they've all put their own chapter in the document, which is now law. And there's so many of these groups that put their own chapter into law, which is that they can't possibly read each other's laws, what they've just basically written for themselves. And so they voted in this 1.3 trillion, which is America already owes 30 trillion. So this is where your inflation's coming off. Another one trillion. That's going to add 3% to your inflation rate straight away. So they're just carrying on doing that. They're absolutely killing the future for now. That's what for the cash, for their immediate cash. And they know the economies are all going to crash. So how they want to come out the other side, I'm not too sure.
Saying that, but yet it never does.
Well,
that's because they keep creating another trillion. They're able to keep creating another trillion at the moment. Greg.
Yeah,
that's right. We won't be able to carry on with our $100 a week. You'll need $1 million a week just to keep alive pretty soon.
When you print more money, then you make things worth less. Or worth more.
And you enslave. Yeah. And you technically enslave people to longer and harder working hours.
Yep.
Because the money never truly keeps price with the devaluation.
I wonder how it ever got to, all of the companies now, Target and Walmart, McDonald's, all are paying $15 to $18 an hour all of a sudden. Where did that come from? Are they getting supplemented maybe from the government for doing that? How can they make a profit by paying their people that much? Or do they make that much?
Yeah, but Greg, you've got to have a look.
Back when I was in my 20s, people that did that got minimum wage.
Well, that is the minimum wage now.
Oh, wow. Are you kidding me?
That is the minimum wage. Shoot. See, but you've got to have a look at this. If you go to a place like McDonald's and buy one of their meal deals, You're probably looking at $15.
Oh, if I go to McDonald's for me and the kids, it's $32.
Mhm.
Family of four.
Yep.
$32.
Yep. Oh, I bet you. When was the last time you did that?
Last week.
All right.
Every once in a while, we'll have a pizza night or a McDonald's night.
If you went to
dudes living
McDonald's-
together, man, we don't have a woman here. We need one
Oh, I
desperately.
know that. But if you did that out here, 4 people going to McDonald's and buying their meal deals,
Yeah.
I doubt you'd walk away. I doubt you'd walk away under $60.
Oh man, that's awful. That's worse. That's twice as
Yeah.
much. Yeah. I wouldn't be
Yeah.
doing it.
So
Simple as that.
that's why it's not cheap. It's not cheap food out here anymore.
If you get it, like
And their rolls and their so-called buns and their burgers have all got smaller too.
everything has to be supersized now, and I don't know. A good pizza. If you want a good pizza, like Jets are really good pizza. Then it's $25-$30. Unless you want to go to Little Caesars and get one for $5. But one person can get a little pizza. There's really not much to it, you know. Yeah. That's two different.
There's your inflation.
Yeah. Two different pizzas.
I think Nick would agree. You wouldn't have much takeaway, would you, Nick?
I think he left.
Sorry, chaps, I just had to go out for a sec.
I'm
I'm still online.
I doubt you'd have a lot of takeaway food, Nick.
Don't have any. Well, sometimes I have fish and chips still. I really enjoy that.
Have you ever had chicken shawarma?
Chicken what?
Shawarma. It's a Middle Eastern chicken like sandwich. It's so good. Man. Those things are insane. I love them. They got garlic sauce on them. Really, really good. Middle Eastern food is very tasty.
Oh,
Yeah, we have. Our sort of go-to stuff is you get Pakistani curry houses, and you get kebabs from there, lamb or chicken kebabs, and they're very good.
Yeah. Same thing.
Yeah,
Lamb chops too, man. Ooh.
yeah, they are really good. It's one of my great pleasures in life, that going and getting a curry down there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so we have that, or fish and chips generally.
Yeah. What
And
on-
pudding and
on a
chips
certain
we have.
night, like, don't you guys have fish and chips on Tuesdays or something like that?
Used to be Fridays, it used to be.
It used to be Friday.
Yeah.
What is it now?
Yeah. Anytime you like, anytime
I
now.
love
But
fish and chips, man. Cod is the best.
yeah, cod in batter, absolutely lovely.
Nothing like it.
Yeah, we have it with mushy peas.
Tartar sauce. You're making me hungry. Can't stop talking about food, man. I haven't eaten.
Well, I've got all my family moving the rest of the house out at the moment, Greg. So I'm struggling talking here.
Yeah, that's okay, man. You know, I was gonna log, but then I thought, maybe Nick will show up. I know Andy was probably gonna be there, so.
Well, you've been putting a lot of stuff out recently, Greg. So I've got a bit of catching up to do.
Yeah, I don't want people to forget.
Certainly
Yeah,
won't.
and Nick, we started the night off with Ted.
Yeah, Ted. He had surgery on his
Uh,
back,
Ted's-
big time, man. Like the first 4 vertebrae or some stuff like that.
Oh, Ted has, yeah.
That's hurt.
Oh, savage, yeah. Once they finish with that, it's they kind of after a few of those vertebrae together. Once they're done,
Man, oh man.
it's pretty brutal having that back surgery, I think.
No doubt.
Yeah, he said it took 3 weeks to get the pain under control,
Yeah.
and now he's been so they gave him one of those walkers to push around, and he objected to that greatly, and he's now got himself to a point where around home he can do about 30 steps.
Yeah, well, he just had
Without being afraid of the walker, so he's quite proud of him. He's quite proud of himself being able to achieve that, which is a good effort. You consider he is in his mid 70s, so that's a pretty good healing effort.
Yeah, it is, and he's got the right attitude as well, because you've really got to fight when you're in that position. You have to fight. You don't want to get out of bed. You've got to, you know.
Because he told us
ever give up, ever.
Because he told us, Nick. They said to him, "Oh, if you don't get this done within 12 months, you won't be able to, basically you won't be able to move."
Yeah.
So that's why he got it done.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he's a determined person, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. That's right. Yep.
Yeah, good.
He's a good guy. He's a good guy.
Yeah, he is.
So it's been a good session, hasn't it, Greg?
Yes. Yeah, we've had a
good
good night.
show.
It's had a little bit of everything, hasn't it?
Yep.
That's the way it should be.
Yep. So I might join you, Nick. And it's time for me to disappear too.
What are you gonna
Yeah.
We've had our first 3 or 4 days of summer. Today was about 36. So yeah, so it's the first.
Fahrenheit. You gotta speak.
Around 100.
Speak English to me, huh?
Yeah, around 100.
Oh, 100. Yeah. Yeah, you can have that. But I'll tell you what, I'd rather take that than what it was here today. 46.
Yeah, I think we're on about 6 degrees, so we're on about 40, 42 or something like that, I would think.
That's unseasonably warm for this time of year in Michigan. It was 60 on Friday. What's going on?
Yeah, you get it. You get these warm days there, though, don't you? And next day you'll get minus 20 coming over.
Oh, you sure do, man. One day you're flying kites, the next day you're shoveling the snow off your driveway. That's Michigan.
Well, where was it? They were saying the other day, one of those little places off some lake in the US had a huge dumping of snow. And now they're worried that as it melts, it'll cause flooding. Can't remember the name of the place. Around New York State, they've been getting a real lot of snow. Yeah, so don't worry. Parts of the US has been copping it pretty damn good.
Well, I hope it skips Michigan. I hate snow. I used to love it. I used to be a skier. Not anymore. Too hard on the knees. Plus, we never get snow anymore. We used to be the winter wonderland. That was what was on the license plates. Not anymore. It's a Great Lakes state now. Snow just disappeared. Man, we used to have just bales of it, snow banks against houses and stuff. That's what I remember when I was a kid. We don't have that no more.
Look
Look
at all the bitumen that's been laid, Greg. And big absorbs heat. You rode the black stuff, the bitumen on the road. All that stuff absorbs heat. It's black.
Yeah.
Of course, it's going to take a lot more to get the snow that you're talking about.
Yeah, we
On computer.
We just don't get it no more like we used to.
Yeah.
Realistically, how far are you off being in a position where you can live up there?
I've got to get a fire in there. Let me come out. I'm online here.
All right. Well, there's not, but there's not the records are coming up, and then just a few jigsaws. Oh, there's not. There's 3 or 4 boxes. That's all.
All right then, Greg. Well, I think we'll leave you at that and catch you later on.
Well, if you guys want to go, okay. It was good. I always enjoy our chats, and there will be more. There will be more.
I love you and leave you guys, and Hope to speak soon. Hope to
All
speak very soon.
All right.
Hey, Nick,
fellas.
all the best with the shift.
All the best, you guys.
All the best.
Bobby and Luke.
Happy New Year's, my friends.
Happy
I'll
New
see
Year.
you guys tomorrow or on the flip side.
No worries. Catch up.
All right. Thank you, folks,
Hey,
for
Greg.
watching. See you. Thanks for watching, folks. I'm gonna close out with a song, and then, well, let's just see what this. Just maybe a few more minutes.
Astronomers discover the first cloudless Jupiter-like planet. This marks the second time astronomers have ever observed a cloud-free exoplanet and have detected the first Jupiter-like planet without clouds or haze in its observable atmosphere. The findings were published in the Astrophysical Journal Letters. Named WASP 62b, the gas giant, was first detected in 2012 through the Wide-Angle Search for Planets WASP South Survey. Its atmosphere, however, had never been closely studied until now. For my thesis, I take discovered planets and I follow up on them to characterize their atmospheres. Known as hot Jupiter, WASP 62b is 575 light years from Earth, about half the size of Jupiter. However, unlike our Jupiter, which takes nearly 12 years to orbit the Sun, WASP 62b completes the rotation around its star in just 4.5 days. 4.5 days. This proximity to the star makes it extremely hot, hence the name Hot Jupiter. Alarm recorded data and observations of the planet using spectroscopy, the study of electromagnetic radiation, go figure, to help detect chemical elements. Alarm specifically monitored WASP 62b as it swept in front of its host star 3 times, making visible light observations, which can be detected the presence of sodium and potassium in a planet's atmosphere. I'll get plenty of bananas. I'll admit that at first I wasn't too excited about this planet, Alarm says, but after coming up with some good mottos, I coaxed myself into it. But once I started to take a look at the data, I got excited. While there was no evidence of potassium, sodium's presence was strikingly clear. The team was able to view the full sodium absorption lines in their data, or its complete fingerprint. Clouds or haze in the atmosphere would obscure the complete signature of sodium, Alarm explains, and astronomers usually can only make out small hints of its presence. Well, every chemical burns a different color. This is smoking gun evidence that we are seeing a clear atmosphere. Cloud-free planets are exceedingly rare. Astronomers estimate that less than 7% of exoplanets have clear atmospheres. According to recent research, for example, the first and only other known exoplanet with a clear atmosphere was discovered in 2018, named WASP 96b. It is classified as a hot Saturn. Astronomers believe studying exoplanets with cloudless atmospheres can lead to a better understanding of how they were formed. Their rarity suggests something else is going on, or they formed in a different way than most planets. Alon says, clear atmospheres also make it easier to study the chemical composition of planets, can help identify what a planet is made of. With the launch of the James Webb Telescope later this year, the team hopes to have new opportunities to study and better understand WASP 62b. The telescope's improved technologies, like higher resolution, should help them probe the atmosphere even closer to search for the presence of anything but electricity, such as silicon. And that's the story. Ancient relic points to a turning point in Earth's history 42,000 years ago. That sounds interesting. Ancient relic points to a turning point in Earth's history 42,000 years ago. Just like in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the answer was 42. The temporary breakdown of Earth's magnetic field 42,000 years ago sparked major climate shifts that led to global environmental change and mass extinctions. A new international study co-led by UNSW Sydney and the South Australian Museum shows. I remember about Karuri trees, which have been preserved in sediments for over 40,000 years. Using the ancient trees, we could measure the spike in atmospheric radiocarbon levels caused by the collapse of Earth's magnetic field. While scientists already know the magnetic poles temporarily flipped around 41 to 42,000 years ago, known as the Lachamps excursion, they didn't know exactly how it because it was long after Aboriginal people arrived. The same time that the Australian environment shifted to the current arid state, says Professor Cooper. The paper suggests that Adam's event could explain a lot of other evolutionary mysteries, like the extinction of Neanderthals and the sudden widespread appearance of figurative art in caves around the world. It's the most surprising and important discovery I've ever been involved in, Cooper said. The perfect storm, the magnetic North Pole, that is, the direction a compass needle points to, doesn't have a fixed location. It usually wobbles close to the North Pole and the northernmost point of Earth's axis. Over time, due to dynamic movements within the Earth's core, just like the magnetic South Pole. Sometimes, for reasons that aren't clear, the magnetic poles movements can be more drastic. Around 41 to 42,000 years ago, they swapped places entirely. And there is evidence that the South Pole should really be in the north and the North Pole in the south. Because the North Pole is 10,000 feet deep. There's no land. The South Pole is 10,000 feet high. If the Earth was held into position by Saturn, it would have been by the poles, and it would have made Earth an egg-shaped, with an indentation in the south and pulling in the north. So it would make sense that 10,000 feet high should be in the north, which was technically our mythologically Hyperborea, all the North Pole myths. But it fits. But like I said, it was an extraterrestrial event. It didn't come from within. And that is what they're missing. All right, let's see. Earth's magnetic field dropped. According to the team's findings, the most dramatic part was the lead up to the reverse, when the poles were migrating across the Earth. Earth's magnetic field dropped to only 0 to 6% strength during the Adams event. I never heard of the Adams event, do you? Says Professor Turney. We essentially had no magnetic field at all. Our cosmic radiation shield was totally gone. During the magnetic field breakdown, the Sun experienced several grand solar minima, long-term periods of quiet solar activity. I think this is all a guess. That's what I think. Even though the GSM means less activity on the Sun's surface, the weakening of its magnetic field can mean more space weather, like solar flares and galactic cosmic rays. That is true. Could head Earth's way. And it has been, hasn't it? I mean, our magnetic field is weaker. Man-made EMF messes with Earth's magnetosphere. It's insanity what they're doing. Even though GSM means less activity on the Sun's surface, the weakening of its magnetic field can mean more space weather. But the thing is this. If Earth lost its magnetic field, then how did it get it back? By the Sun strengthening, I suppose. Yep. Unfiltered radiation from space ripped apart air particles in Earth's atmosphere. Separating electrons and emitting light, a process called ionization. Yeah, when something becomes ionized, it glows.
Ionization.
The ionized air fried the ozone layer, triggering a ripple of climate change across the globe. Well, I don't know. I think that might be cyclical, but who knows? I don't think we've been going around the sun long enough, honestly. But even if we are, what can we do? Sitting around being afraid isn't the answer. We have like 450,000 volts, if I'm not mistaken, above our heads in the ionosphere. And beneath our feet, we have the same exact amount of voltage and negative electricity, electrons. and we are in the middle. And that's where the gravity thing, dipole to dipole, comes in. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it, but it would only make sense that it would be electric. Everything else is. Declassified FBI document states that Nikola Tesla was an alien from Venus. Now, I don't know what this is about. Let's find out. We've gotten no help from the mainstream media regarding him at all. Nikola Tesla is a very well-known scientist that no one ever talks about or teaches in school. I hated that part. Who made numerous inventions and discoveries, such as the Tesla coil, alternating current, electricity, neon lights, artificial lighting, X-rays, the rotating magnetic field, just to name a few. His radio technology is actually used in today's computers, smartphones, navigation systems, satellites, missiles, and spaceships. Incredibly, in 1925, he predicted that people would eventually be able to stay connected by seeing and hearing each other, no matter where they were across the planet, by a small device that could fit in a pocket, decades before the smartphone was even created. He had over 1,000 invention patents on record. That included his 1905 patent called The Art of Transmitting Electrical Energy Through the Natural Medium, based on his thoughts that the Earth was an electrical generator that could supply an unlimited amount of electric power. It was obvious Tesla was an incredibly intelligent man who was ahead of his time in regards to his work. In fact, it has been said that his inventions were between 300 and 1,000 years ahead of time, and that the world would be about half a century behind where we are today if it was not for Tesla. This, however, led to some people believing that he was such a unique individual that he didn't even come from our planet. A declassified FBI document called Interplanetary Sessions Newsletter was written on June 14th, 1957, which was a good year, and contained some unbelievable claims that Tesla was originally from the planet Venus. Well, if he lives on Venus, he had to be pretty smart because it's hot. How hot is it, you might ask? It is approximately 800 degrees. It read in part, the space people who have visited the Tesla engineers many times and have told us that Tesla was a Venusian, brought to this planet as a baby in 1856, and left with Mr. and Mrs. Tesla in a remote mountain province in what is now Yugoslavia. Familiar story. That wouldn't be Superman, would it? Isn't it ironic that the real Superman was playing the villain in the first Superman cartoon, Small World? I wonder why the FBI really does have a file. Additionally, a woman named Margaret Storm, who was writing a book on Tesla's life, was given information through a device that the scientist created in 1938 in order to conduct interplanetary communication. She allegedly even had contact with the space people. The theory that Nikola Tesla originally came from Venus and was brought to Earth as a baby is certainly far-fetched, even though many people do believe that there are aliens living right here on Earth, Area 51, for example, and Mount Shasta. But what's even stranger, the FBI had the information in one of their files which ultimately raises even more questions, such as why did the space people reveal Tesla's identity to the FBI? And perhaps even better, did the FBI actually have close contact with extraterrestrials? Or is it just a big heaping pile of smoldering The entire 64-page document can be read here. This looks like a file, June 1457, dear friends. We have not issued lecture by George Van Tassel and Dan Fry in Ballroom of Hotel Diplomat, 43rd Street, New York, 8 p.m. Thursday, June 20th, 1957. Donation $1.25.
I would like to get $1.25.
George Van Tassel operates the Giant Rock, California spaceport and airport, and has been host to 4 annual spacecraft conventions. The author of 2 books, I Rode a Flying Saucer and Into This World and Out Again. Dan Fry is the author of The White Sands Incident. In this book, he tells the story of a trip which he made in a flying saucer from a desert spot. I heard that something new was revealed about Tesla, but then they come out with this nonsense. I'm looking for, it was something about him communicating with Mars, and communication was real. And they sent back these pictures, and one of them is a face. Now, is it a coincidence? I don't know. But you can't ever find anything because they glob up the internet with all kinds of other crap, like how much money the Tesla car makes. And I have something else here that I found about Tesla. While Nikola Tesla was conducting experiments with his magnifying transmitter at Colorado Springs in 1899, he detected coherent signals, which he determined had originated on Mars. Tesla was widely criticized for his astounding claims, yet no one could seriously dispute him. He was a pioneer without peer. No one then has reported constructing a magnifying transmitter or otherwise replicated his experiments. The issue remains unresolved, and the mystery unsolved. Tesla revealed no technical details in his pronouncements and publications of that period other than the pertinent patents. His Colorado notebooks were published in the 1980s, but they make no mention of his alleged contact with Mars. Tesla elaborated on the subject, Talking with Planets, in Collier's Weekly, March 1901, which states, which says, as I was improving my machines for the production of intense electrical actions, I was also perfecting the means for observing feeble efforts. One of the most interesting results, and also one of great practical importance, was the development of certain contrivances for indicating at a distance of many hundred miles an approaching storm, its direction, speed, and distance traveled. I believe Velikovsky reported on this as well. It was in carrying on this work that for the first time I discovered those mysterious effects which have elicited such unusual interest. I had perfected the apparatus referred to so far that from my laboratory in the Colorado mountains, I could feel the pulse of the globe, as it were, noting every electrical change that occurred within the radius of 1,100 miles. I can never forget the first sensation I experienced I had when it dawned upon me that I had observed something possibly incalculable. Consequences to mankind. I had observed something possibly of incalculable consequences to mankind. I felt as though I were present at the birth of a new knowledge, or the revelation of a great truth. My first observations positively terrified me, as there was present in them something mysterious, not to say supernatural. And I was alone in my laboratory at night. I might have had sand on the anode a little bit too much too. But at that time, the idea of these disturbances being intelligently controlled signals did not yet present itself to me. The changes I noted were taking place periodically, and with such a clear suggestion of number and order that they were not traceable to any cause known to me. I was familiar, of course, with such electrical disturbances as are produced by the sun, aurora borealis, and earth currents. And I was as sure as I could be of any fact that these variations were due to none of these causes. The nature of my experiments precluded the possibility of the changes being produced by atmospheric disturbances, as has been rashly asserted by some. It was some time afterward when the thought flashed upon my mind that the disturbances I had observed might be due to an intelligent control. Although I could not decipher their meaning, it was impossible for me to think of them as having been entirely accidental. The feeling is constantly growing on me that I had been the first to hear the greeting of one planet to another. A purpose was behind these electrical signals. Decades later, on his birthday in 1937, he announced, a lot of people think that he lived like the last 20 or 30 years of his life on a park bench. There's a part of that that's true, but he was also, like Howard Hughes, went into like the Black Ops for probably one of the first ones to work for the government doing science. Things like the Philadelphia experiment. He was involved in that too. I don't know. Decades later, on his birthday in 1938, he announced, I have devoted much of my time the year past to the perfecting of a new small and compact apparatus by which energy in considerable amounts can now be flashed through interstellar space to any distance without the slightest dispersion. New York Times, Sunday, 11 July. 1937. Tesla never publicly revealed any technical details of his improved transmitter, but in his 1937 announcement, he revealed a new formula showing that the kinetic and potential energy of a body is the result of motion and determined by the product of its mass. Now let's take that, let's break that down. The potential energy of a body is the result of motion and determined by the product of its mass. So if you got a guy chugging down third base toward home and the catcher is at the plate, of course, the energy that he would be conducting would be from his running, right? So that's the result of his motion, how much energy he's carrying according to his mass, how big he is. Okay, I just wanted to maybe break that down, understand it with you. The kinetic and potential energy of a body is the result of motion and determined by the product of its mass and the square of its velocity, how fast he's running, how big he is. Yeah. Let the mass be reduced. The energy is reduced by the same proportion. If it be reduced to zero, the energy is likewise zero for any finite velocity. New York, 12 July, 37. About 40 years later, Arthur Matthews claimed that Tesla had secretly developed the Teslascope for the purpose of communicating with Mars. The late Dr. Andrija Puharich met with Matthews and discussed him in an interview, Pyramid Guide, 78. Arthur Matthews came from England. Matthews' father was a laboratory assistant to the noted physicist Lord Kelvin back in the 1890s. Tesla came over to England to meet Kelvin to convince him that alternating current was more efficient than direct current. Kelvin, at that time, opposed the AC movement in 1902. The Matthews family left England and immigrated to Canada. When Matthews was 16, his father arranged for him to apprentice under Tesla. He eventually worked for him and continued his alliance until Tesla's death in 1943. It's not generally known, but Tesla actually had 2 huge magnifying transmitters built in Canada, and Matthews operated one of them. People mostly know about the Colorado Springs transmitters, and the unfinished one on Long Island. I saw the 2 Canadian transmitters. All the evidence is there. The Teslascope is the thing Tesla invented to communicate with beings on other planets. There's a diagram of the Teslascope in Matthew's book, The Wall of Light. In principle, it takes in cosmic ray signals. Eventually, the signals are stuck down to audio. Speak into one end, and the signal goes out the other end as a cosmic ray emitter. Light emits, yes. Even if it's a laser, a cosmic ray emitter. It's pretty cool. I wonder whatever happened with it, whatever came of it. Watch, they're probably all using it. Matthew's diagram of the Teslascope make minimal electronic sense. No one has ever confirmed the reality of the Teslascope. Several years after Tesla announced getting signals from Mars, Marconi also claimed to have heard from an alien radio transmitter. See Marconi always trying to get his beak into the news to be somebody. That's what I see him as. However, Marconi was more easily dismissed by his contemporaries, who claimed that Marconi had received interference from another radio station on Earth. Well, of course they're going to say that. That's their party line. In the 1970s, L.G. Lawrence, field manager of the Ecola Institute, described his communication by accident with ET intelligences. October 1971, while conducting exploratory RBS remote biological sensing experiments in Riverside County, California, our field measurements, organic transducer complex, intercepted a train of apparently intelligent communication signals. Tight spacing and discrete pulse intervals, while accidentally allowed to remain pointed at the constellation Ursa Major during a short rest period. The phenomenon prevailed for somewhat over 33 minutes. A somewhat similar phenomenon was observed April 10, 1972. The apparent signals, aside from seemingly growing weaker, appearing to be transmitted at great intervals ranging from weeks to months. possibly years, a faint coherent binary type phenomenon was noted during oral monitoring. Oral monitoring. Intervals between rapid series of pulse trains ranged from 3 to 10 minutes. Because our equipment is impervious to electromagnetic radiation and found free of internal anomalies, the tentative conclusion of biological type interstellar communications signals has emerged. As a mere audio presentation, the instrumentation lap is unpleasant to listen to. The instrumentation tape is unpleasant to listen to. However, a fascinating degree of enchantment tends to emerge after the tape has been played back 3 or more times. Typically, over a period of weeks, we ascribe this to psychoacoustical adaptation. I agree with that. The tape contains, if you have a noise that's common, eventually you get deaf to it. It's like that radar thing with my TV screen. To know we were getting radiated. The tape contains a short, incremental series of deep, harmonious oscillations. Resembling nonsense chatter or background modulations. I'd like to hear it. An intelligent character of the overall pulse is applied by discrete spacing patterns, apparent repetitions of sequences, and highly attenuated Gaussian noise. That's going on now, I guess. Maybe it's coming from Perseus, the region of our galaxy. The signals have been heard by the writer for several years, generally range between about 4 to 5 hours right ascension, with a peak intensity near 4.5 hours. The signals appear to be several tones. I wonder, well, I just thought I'd read that on Tesla, and I went a little far. That's okay.
Don't forget to check out that giant found on mountaintop. There's a couple of them. One in Mexico, one in British Columbia. See what you think of that. Do you think it's a hoax or if could be for real? There was something else too. I can't remember what it was. Soon. My daughter's going to be getting up. Our day will be on. So have a wonderful New Year's, everyone. Thank you for watching. I really hate leaving, but I have to. Great big galaxies, and you tell me nobody lives in them? Impossible.
is the second part, is Alien Night. We're going to try to get to the bottom of all this hubbub, find out what's going on. One of the most famous inventors and thinkers in history, as well as one of the most misunderstood, must certainly be the Serbian-American inventor, electrical engineer, mechanical engineer, and futurist Nikola Tesla. His contributions to science and technology are immeasurable. Throughout his life, developing a range of electrical and mechanical devices are just mind-boggling. How he could think these things through. I heard he could see the invention in his mind's eye and do things like test bearings for wear over time in his mind. His contributions to science and technology are immeasurable. Throughout his life, developing a range of electrical and mechanical devices, his alternating current, AC, induction motor, related polyphase AC patents, early X-ray imaging devices, and numerous other inventions considered to be nothing short of miracles in his time. He was well ahead of his time, and also predicted many of the technological innovations we take for granted today, such as smartphones and wireless communication. By the time he died in 1943, Tesla was the holder of over 1,000 patents of all kinds, including neon lights. And you know how he invented the neon light? I think I got it from Eric Dollard. Edison was being not a nice guy to Tesla, and he wouldn't let him use his patented light bulb to light the World's Fair. So he invented his own light bulb, neon lights, those kind of lights that come in the tube. Pretty amazing. Artificial lighting, particle beam energy, and many, many more, of course. Considering his mystery and mystique, many stories and conspiracies have gravitated towards Nikola Tesla, including alleged participation in the Philadelphia experiment using teleportation. The invention of the perpetual motion machine, I think that's where he wanted the solar system to power the machine, something like that. The creation of a deadly beam weapon called the Death Ray, and others. And among these, some of the weirdest have to do with alleged alien intelligences. The rumors of Tesla and his connection to aliens have gone deep, with all sorts of conspiracies stating that he was contacted by aliens who helped him along, and even that he was an alien himself. But the most intriguing are the ones that Tesla claimed himself. In an article for Collier's Weekly in 1901, Tesla would make the claim that he had listened in on actual alien communications at his lab in Colorado Springs in 1899. This was an era which both he and Italian inventor Guglielmo Marconi were pioneering the push into radio technology with their groundbreaking discoveries. And one night, Tesla would be testing out a unique radio antenna designed to monitor thunderstorms. He claimed that he had eavesdropped into communications by otherworldly alien intelligences. Even now, at times, I can vividly recall the incident and see my apparatus as though it were actually before me. My first observations positively terrified me, as there was present in them something mysterious, not to say supernatural, and I was alone in my laboratory at night. But at that time, the idea of these disturbances being intelligently controlled signals did not yet present itself to me. It was some time afterward when the thought flashed upon my mind that the disturbances I had observed might be due to an intelligent control. Although I could not decipher their meaning, it was impossible for me to think of them as having been entirely accidental. The feeling is constantly growing on me that I had been the first to hear the greeting of one planet to another. Tesla would speculate that the aliens were perhaps from Mars, which at the time was the main culprit for anything alien related. And he became obsessed with further refining his technology so that he might further communicate with these entities. Marconi himself agreed that this was perfectly legitimate pursuit and pursued his own radio communications with aliens, which he would claim were met with success, stating, "I have encountered during my experiments with wireless telegraphy a most amazing phenomenon. Most striking of all is receipt by me personally of signals which I believe originated in the space beyond our planet. I believe it is entirely possible that these signals may have been sent by the inhabitants of other planets to the inhabitants of Earth. If there are any human beings on Mars, I would not be surprised if they should find a means of communication with this planet, a linking of the science of astronomy with that of electricity may bring about almost anything." Amazing. Right you are. This all stirred up quite a bit of excitement at the time, appearing in the media in numerous articles and catching the attention of the great inventor and one-time partner of Tesla, turned rival Thomas Edison. Edison was fascinated by the idea of pursuing radio technology for the purposes of communicating with aliens on Mars, and would himself say, "Although I am not an expert in wireless telegraphy, I can plainly see that the mysterious wireless interruptions experienced by Mr. Marconi's operators may be good grounds for the theory that inhabitants of other planets are trying to signal us." Mr. Marconi is quite right in stating that this is entirely within the realm of possible. If we are to accept the theory of Mr. Marconi that these signals are being sent out by inhabitants of other planets, we must at once accept with it the theory of their advanced development. Either they are our intellectual equal or our superiors. It would be stupid for us to assume that we have the corner on all the intelligence in the universe. Through all of this, Tesla supposedly actually invented new antenna towers and equipment specifically for the purpose of continuing his eavesdropping sessions on the aliens. And he seemed to be pushing for this technology to be used for what he saw as a sort of new frontier for the human race. He would express enthusiasm and optimism in his endeavor, once writing, "One day my ear caught what seemed to be regular signals. I knew they could not have been produced upon Earth. Marconi's idea of communicating with the other planets is the greatest and most fascinating problem confronting the human imagination today. To ensure success, a body of competent scientists should be organized to study all the possible plans and put into excitation the best. The matter should be directed probably by astronomers with sufficient backing from men with money and imagination. Supposing that there are intelligent human beings on Mars, success is easily within the range of possibility." Well, that was, they ended up giving it to Hollywood. Everything's gone wrong, right? Even the wrong people became president, and everything's backwards now, but that's another story. Most certainly, some planets are not inhabited, but others are. And among these, there must exist life under all conditions and phases of development. Personally, I base my faith on the feeble planetary electrical disturbances, which I discovered in the summer of 1899, and which, according to my investigations, could not have originated from the sun, the moon, or Venus. Further study, science has satisfied me that they must have could not have originated from the sun, the moon, or Venus. Further study, science has satisfied me that they must have emanated from Mars, All doubt in this regard will soon be dispelled. I have observed electrical actions which have appeared inexplicable, faint, and uncertain though they were. They have given me a deep conviction and foreknowledge that ere long all human beings on this globe, as one, will turn their eyes to the firmament above with feelings of love and reverence, thrilled by the glad news. Interestingly, although Tesla found so much promise in this, he would suddenly give up his experiments delving into such matters, spawning conspiracy theories, that he was silenced by those who did not want this knowledge to be known. It dovetails nicely into the fact that much of his writings and diaries were confiscated by the FBI after his death, and it all adds further layer to the mysterious life of an already enigmatic figure. Tesla had become almost legendary, with countless tales of weirdness surrounding him, and now he can add to the time he supposedly contacted aliens in the mix. It is perfectly feasible he merely picked up anomalous signals from space that had more mundane explanations beyond their ability to explain at the time. But in the end, we are left to wonder what he really found and what might have happened had he been allowed to continue his research. It is all very fascinating indeed, and adds to the many tales of this mysterious figure from history. Indeed, Brent Swenser. Excellent article, Brent. I'll leave a link in the description.
I'll start when you throw it down.
Hold it, boys. Everybody ready?
Yeah. Major Keyhole, as author of the book Flying Saucers Are Real, what is your opinion of these new sightings of unidentified objects?
With all due respect to the Air Force, I believe that some of them will prove to be of interplanetary origin. During a 3-year investigation, I found that many pilots have described objects of substance and high speed. One case, pilots reported their plane was buffeted by an object which passed them at 500 miles an hour. Obviously, this was a solid object, and I believe it was from outer space.
This gentleman who was in the Air Force as a younger guy, and I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with his story. They were photographing weapons, a dummy weapon that was launched, and in comes this UFO out of nowhere, catches up to it going 8,000 miles an hour, goes around it like it's sitting still, and then takes off. And it was he didn't say anything about it for 30 years. I don't really think he's the kind of guy to make things up. He's a professor. That is to say, I know professors can make things up, but I don't think he's making this up. Something happened. I couldn't resist this one. This guy's last name is Tompkins, and he tells one of the weirdest stories I think I've ever heard. He's also the guy who tells the story of Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin running into giant ships on the moon. Has this guy just been maybe hitting the gas a little bit too much? Or is he for real?
Extraterrestrials over Los Angeles. Most people were told it was Japanese, but it wasn't. Tell us what you know, Bill, what you saw.
No, actually, we were living in Long Beach at that time, and around 7 o'clock, my brother and I were reading the newspaper on the floor. My dad called us and told us to come out onto the deck. We were on the second floor of a very large house that was broken up into 4 apartments. And so they had a big deck way up. And we were 4 blocks from the ocean. So we couldn't see the water, but we could see the area above it, and here was this bright light. And all 3 of us were looking at it. We called some of the neighbors, and they came out on their deck. We all looked at it. And while we were watching it for several minutes, a tiny beam came out of it and at about a 45-degree angle to the left and went down towards the ocean. That beam then flipped up directly towards our apartment. Hit the back of the apartment, hit the trees, lit up everything around us, and went out.
Somebody knew you were watching. That's wild. That didn't just happen.
It was weird.
Yeah. Yeah. Was this Bill? Excuse me. Was this before or after the anti-aircraft had unloaded? Was it 4,000 rounds or something at this object, or is this a second object? What do you think?
No, this was before, because later in the evening the anti-aircraft started firing. And incidentally, what has not been published is the number of U.S. Navy anti-aircraft guns. We had the whole fleet at that time, and they used up all of their 20 millimeter, 40 millimeter, and 5-inch guns.
Firing out of where were they anchored? L.A. Harbor? Long Beach?
They were in Long Beach Harbor.
And they were shooting at this? Wow. Nobody talks about that.
The Coast Artillery was firing at them. And, of course, searchlights, we had 8 searchlights on this one big one that came in and it parked. And it was there for over an hour.
Right, yeah.
Different ones came above it, came beside it, came underneath it. The searchlights would pull off of the big one and follow the smaller ones and try to shoot them down. And it continued. But finally it got boring, so we went back to bed around 3.
I have never heard this before. That's fascinating. Go ahead.
Our neighbors stayed the whole night, and they said that it really didn't stop till around almost 5 o'clock. But the next day there was articles in the paper that they thought there had been some military aircraft coming in. It was just a cover-up.
Sure, of course.
But my dad was, like your friend, he was the guy that was responsible for that area. And, of course, he talked to everybody. And the interesting thing to me was that nobody got excited. Nobody got upset. There weren't any heart attacks. And while this was going on, over in London, Germany was bombing London. And those people were trying to get underneath the ground so they didn't get killed. And we have vehicles above us at less than 8,000 feet, most of them.
Right.
They were real high. And nobody was fast. All of them were slow. And many of them just parked.
Many of them what? Say that again, Bill. Many of them were...
Many of them just parked. They stopped. And they parked there.
Wow.
And this is right in Long Beach.
This is astonishing because we've only heard Bob, you know this. The standard story on the Battle of L.A. was that there was one craft slowly meandering its way from the Culver City, Santa Monica Mountains area, all the way down to Long Beach before it, quote, disappeared. That's all we heard.
There were two public releases. One of them was unclassified one, said we fired 1,432 rounds of ammunition. And then, of course, there was a top secret release that said that we recovered one craft that had been shot down and crashed in San Bernardino Mountains, and the other craft was salvaged by the Navy at sea.
Okay, hold on. I've heard rumor that one went down by Long Beach offshore and went into the water, crashed.
Correct.
I've heard another rumor that something went down in, I think it was El Monte, and a truck, a big lowboy, a flatbed truck came in, and that may have been an American fighter that was up there and got hit by our own friendly fire. I don't know. Do you know anything about that?
No, I don't know that case.
Okay.
I'm quoting from a top secret Majestic document.
Oh, my. Okay. So, two of these, you'd think that they'd know better than to park while they're getting shot at, but two were shot down, or one was damaged and it crashed in the ocean. The other went down in the San Bernardino Mountains. The big one, we'll call that the mothership just for fun, moved off and apparently was undamaged. You can see the pictures of the Battle of Los Angeles, and you can see the exploding AA all around this thing and on it, and it wasn't damaging the big one. The smaller craft perhaps were scout craft, and they weren't so heavily able to withstand the bombardment. Now, what Bill just said is that the ships in Long Beach emptied their magazines. They had no more ammo to fire. So that would jack up the 1,700 round number to thousands.
Well, it would, and this was an Army report, so they probably didn't count the Navy rounds.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Fascinating. Okay, Bill.
It was interesting that there were several ships in the Navy dry docks in San Pedro.
Yes.
And they didn't even have most of their crews there, but the crews that were there grabbed their guns.
guy, and he had a degree in plasma physics. And he was also a consultant to NASA, and he was a consultant to people out at the Palos Verdes nuclear power generating station just 50 miles west of Phoenix. The other thing he said was there was a base on the moon. I find that quite astounding. I mean, I have heard astounding things, not only from this colonel, okay, but also probably the highest rank was a retired 3-star general, lieutenant general in the Air Force. And he knew another guy that I was in contact with, and this other guy claims that he worked 7 years on the U.S. anti-gravity program. And if a fraction of what he told me, and I've got it tape recorded, is true. Whoa. What a sham the space program is. Because there's another space program going on. A secret space program. And that's what I was attempting to find. In fact, you don't have to go too far to find that there is some secret space programs going on, because they had their own shuttles and their own astronaut crews right out here at Vandenberg Air Force Base, unbeknownst to everybody, and they scuttled a $5 billion facility that was housed there at one time. That was back in the 80s. But the kind of space program he was talking about is using a spacecraft that can leave the bounds of our atmosphere and travel to the planet Mars at 0.8 C, 0.8 the speed of light. And I said, how do you know that? I've been there, he said.
All right, now we might ask the question, well, what the hell is NASA all about if this stuff is going on? What are NASA doing? Well, I'm going to show you a clip of Barack Obama speaking at the Kennedy Space Center.
Of course, we all know that it would be impossible to be able to render an answer 100% for sure whether there is an alien presence on Earth or not. I'm not prepared to believe it at this time. However, the evidence is gathering, and if there were, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised. Take care. Good night. in a great big world. I have found in that big world